sportirelandcampus.ie.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
It's another one of those weekends where it's very difficult to decide exactly what it is that we should be getting our teeth into. So we're going to get our teeth into absolutely everything between now and 9:30. As ever, if you want to get involved in any of the conversations that we're having here on OTBAM, you can just use the hashtag OTBAM, or you can leave a comment under whatever stream you're watching on. Or one of these days we're going to get our WhatsApp up and running, and I'll give you the number for it so you can actually get involved in the conversation. It is 7:30 a.m. It's Jerry Gilroy here with you alongside Eoin Sheahan until 9:30 this morning. Eoin, you're a Munster man. Do you hold out any hope that your team will qualify for the knockout stages? You don't. It's over.
You put your life in the hands of a team like Saracens, really, to bottle it next week, and then there's hope. Like Nathan had the permutations up last night. You're banking on Munster beating Ospreys with a bonus point. Could happen.
That will happen, right?
You're banking on a couple of French teams to win at home. Toulouse and Lyon, I think. It could easily happen. The problem is you need Racing to go to Saracens and beat them when Saracens also need to qualify themselves. That is not going to happen, and that's going to be the thing that lets Munster down, which is a bit of a shame, especially when, in the context of yesterday, they had a chance to make yesterday one of these moments that you thought to yourself, right, Munster are actually on course to do something decent this season, but it turns out that actually they're probably going to have to wait another 12 months to get themselves back into the knockout stages of Europe.
The first half started well for them with kicking penalties, but then there's just this mistake, this mental error from John Klein, where right in front of the referees, he gives one of his opposite numbers the opportunity to dive, basically, and
Eric Beren, I think, wasn't it?
Theatrically fall to the ground. And that's kind of one of those turning points in the game where suddenly you've given away territory, you've given away possession, and you're going to get punished for it, and the pressure just builds and builds and builds to that point. I know that they end up scoring the breakaway try, which is just a brilliant bit of individual work from Conway just before half-time, but it was one-way traffic from that point forward, and that didn't cease in the second half, really.
I was even saying, in the middle of the play that led to Conway's interception, you could start to see a bit of a gulf in class at that moment, and then it kind of added to the drama of it all that Conway had actually gone the whole end of the pitch and shut me up for a moment and actually said that Munster might be in a shout of overachieving within the context of this game, because that's what it would have been, a huge overachievement to go and win in Paris yesterday. When you look at elements of the talent disparity, I guess, it's fairly striking that Racing United were in a much better position, but it's especially striking when you look at the cavalry that was coming off the bench for Munster yesterday. Like, you don't necessarily feel entirely confident when you see the likes of Chris Clute and Arno Botha coming in and trying to change a European game. Like, it's great seeing the likes of John Ryan coming in off the bench. That's one substitution where you thought to yourself, right, this is up to the standard required. But like, this is a topic that we spoke about with Alan last week as well, that there are just certain players who aren't up to scratch with Munster. And if they're not up to scratch, you'd almost prefer there to be a younger academy prospect coming on instead of Chris Clute.
To get the experience and to get the minutes.
Yeah. And it's nothing personal against those guys. It's just like they've been around for a couple of seasons at this point, whereas you'd rather suffer through not getting through the pool stages if there was a homegrown talent at least getting exposure to the La Defense Arena, for example, yesterday.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. 7:33 this morning. Here's what's coming up on the show for you all the way between now and 9:30. Alan Quinlan is going to join us in about 5 minutes' time, bringing the headlines in the newspapers immediately after this. Our top 5 stories of the day, a wide range of stories today. Talking Liverpool, around about 8:15 this morning. Just how much better can they actually get? Can they go this season unbeaten? These are the last remaining questions, because the lead they've opened up at the top is unassailable. We all know that. He knows it, and Klopp knows it, and everybody else knows it too. Kevin Kilbane made his full debut on the ice, obviously a week ago. He was part. If you're not paying any attention to this, Kevin Kilbane is on Dancing on Ice, and we're going to be doing it a lot, as long as it lasts, and it's definitely going to last at least one more week. He made his full debut last night, and didn't fall over, did quite well. Got some praise, got some, attaboy, and then you could improve on this, and this. Sports news coming your way at 8:40 with Tom. Mike Carlson's going to talk to us about a wild divisional weekend where Lamar Jackson is no longer part of the playoff picture, despite the fact that he is like an insanely talented player. And Deal or No Deal coming your way at 9:15 with Phil Egan. We'll bring you the papers.
OTB AM.
So, the front of the Irish Times this morning, down and all but out in Paris as Racing deliver a fast finish. In the end, it was a bit of a pummeling. 39-20 might well actually accurately reflect the difference between the two teams there. And then Klopp, still more to come from Liverpool, is the headline on the soccer piece. Just want to bring you the headline on the back here. Sports looks on in awe as Connacht hit the funding jackpot, is the headline over Johnny Waterson's column. One detail on this. On Friday, not 77 million, but 87 million was handed out. Minister Ross and Minister Kyne's constituencies in Dunleary and Rathdown and Galway, respectively, performed spectacularly and drew 30 million of that amount. Connacht Rugby, 20 million. Tibradden, 5.25 million. Samuel Beckett Civic Campus Dunleary, 5 million. That left 57 million for everybody else. So, pork barrel politics alive and well in Ireland at the moment. And
is there an election coming up?
There definitely is.
Oh, right, okay.
There definitely is. This was all supposed to have stopped. There was supposed to be a very strict criteria on it. And look, Connacht have done very well. 20 million quid. The RFU are getting a lot of money for an organisation who's sitting on a lump of cash, aren't they? It's like, it's funny. Is this definitely... He's like talking about the funding for 20 by 20, 3 million for all women's sports initiatives last year, and that's like a big increase. And then it's like 20 million for you, 5 million for you, 5 million for you. They're like Oprah. They're basically like Oprah throwing the money at their constituencies.
I would say that on the IRFU thing, you can't punish a sport for being run well. But
No,
I think there's a
you
deeper
can't
level to
punish a
this.
sport for being run well, but they can actually afford to do it themselves. To each their need, Eoin, right? Not to like, you guys are rich and you know how to fill out forms, so here's a little more money. Right?
Well, there's definitely truth in that as well, but I wouldn't necessarily say that, like, for example, all this money could just be thrown towards the FAI, for example. That just couldn't happen. You would have to, again, reward people for filling in a form well, because sometimes those people actually fill in the form well because they need the money to do things. But I think that there's definitely truth in the notion that there's a lot of money going to places that politicians are involved in here, which is the story is all this time when it comes to sports capital grants in this country. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail is all over now. Munster's Euro hopes on brink after a Paris loss, and record-breaking Aguero hailed as a legend. He became the top-scoring foreign player in the Premier League yesterday, surpassing Thierry Henry after his hat-trick against Aston Villa.
A story as old as time, but what it does mean is that all the sanctimony that we heard from Fine Gael and the independents down through the years when Fianna Fáil were carving this up, for all the way back to Jim McDade and John O'Donoghue, was all sanctimonious codswallop, because they're doing exactly the same thing themselves. So when they come and they tell you that they're different from each other, they're not. They're just the same. The Examiner here this morning, slipping away, outgunned Munster suffer knockout blow in Paris. They're pretty confident that that strange sequence of events that would be required for them to go through won't happen. So that's the lead in the Examiner today. And then obviously, do I have to do Tab of the Morning for you? Do I? Got to find it. It's a racing one. You talk amongst yourself there on for a second.
I'll go to the Sun while you're finding that. Sheer class, bit of a tabloid pun there as well. Sheer spelled S-H-E-A-R, because Sergio Aguero now has Alan Shearer's... No, he does. Sergio tops Henry in targets, Super Al, Pep Hale's hat-trick hero and record breaker. 177 goals so far. Alan Shearer 260. That would be quite a leap if he was to catch Alan Shearer, so perhaps a bit of a leap there. A fan Ollie on abuse rap. This is a remarkable story. Sheffield United star Ollie McBurney is said to be in hot water with the FA after appearing to make an obscene gesture at Cardiff fans yesterday. Yes, that is him there in the stands wearing a bucket hat yesterday, roaring on his old side Swansea City at the away end at Cardiff City Stadium, the South Wales derby. Remarkable. And then here, Duffy fear over axe. So Shane Duffy fears the axe from Ireland boss Mick McCarthy. He struggled to get a consistent run of games, of course, this season under Graham Potter, and he says you can't take anything for granted. Mick has previously left out big players, so his place is not safe, he says.
It totally is. We all know that's nonsense. Dufresne escapes to victory. Andy Dufresne won at the weekend. We'll get some reaction from Tom to that a little bit later on. It's a horse, if you don't know Andy Dufresne, a very highly rated horse.
Back page of the Irish Independent is Munster staring into the abyss. Picture of Conor Murray there with gritted teeth. Van Graan's Reds have lost their Munsterness as they slide even further behind Europe's elite.
The front of the Telegraph this morning is Super Sergio. City striker Aguero grabs stunning hat-trick to become leading overseas goal scorer in 132-year history of top flight. Would you, if you were picking a team to play a match in the Coliseum for your life, would you pick Thierry Henry or would you pick Sergio Aguero?
Thierry Henry.
Yeah, me too. It's not even close, really, in my head.
As a footballer, as a goal scorer, perhaps, if you needed somebody to tap the ball into the back of the net, like in a crowded box, you would still pick Sergio Aguero. But as a footballer, it's Henry. Front page of the Racing Post is all options open for Frodon, says Nichols. Ryanair chased the obvious route, but owner would love a Gold Cup runner. And back of the Racing Post is down in the mouth. Woe for Bournemouth and Villa as the scrap heats up.
Yeah, Villa going down after that. They're the type of defeats I don't think you can actually, at this stage of the season, recover from. Aguero hits hat-trick to break records. Here's the back page of the Times, the London Times. And Eriksen close to agreeing move to Inter. This will be very interesting to see if it actually happens. Christian Eriksen has stepped closer to leaving Spurs after reaching an agreement in principle with Inter Milan worth about 100 grand a week after tax. So it's the netto figure that we know footballers are most interested in these days, and why wouldn't they be?
Back page of The Guardian this morning is a quote: "It was an honour to be here. Double record breaker Aguero delights Guardiola with hat-trick." And poor Danny Drinkwater there. Picture of him after enduring a debut to forget for Aston Villa.
It's a 4-year deal for Christian Eriksen. 4 years after tax, 20 million.
Not bad.
That's great.
Living in Milan.
That is great. Because when you're retired, you'll still have a lot of money, and they have to pay you every single penny of it over the course of it. Fully guaranteed. King Kun. It's the first one I've seen, that, and it's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Kun Aguero, obviously, as Man City beat Villa 6-1. Van Grant still hopeful, although it looks too late for that. Mayo's spot of bother. Mayo had the game well in hand against Galway yesterday, but ended up losing on penalties in the FPD League. And FAI set to recruit McEnany. This is the only place I've seen this. Retired former Army Commandant Jerry McEnany is on course to become the new FAI president. Donald Conway will step down from the association's highest elected post at Saturday week's EGM. Paul Cook apparently not interested in running for it, and McEnany, who was beaten in the previous vote, is going to come through and take the job, it looks like.
Back page of the Mirror is Cunning a Million. Legend Aguero breaks Henry record and smashes 12th hat-trick in Villa demolition. United to make £65 million Bruno bid. Meanwhile, they're setting to lodge a bid for Bruno Fernandes. We'll be talking about that in Deal or No Deal later. Nigel Pearson there pictured. It's 6 wins to safety for Hornets. He's been incredible since coming in as Watford boss around Christmas. And then there's a picture of Billy Holland and Keith Earls. This one really hurts, and our fate is now out of our hands.
And the Herald this morning focuses on Kerry. Farrell happy with break ahead of league opener. So yesterday, Desi Farrell was in charge for the Dubs on the sideline.
Saturday, yeah.
Saturday, and they had 23 subs, unlimited subs, so they used them all.
Mm-hmm. People got subbed on, subbed off. It was a bit of a carousel, and it's a challenge game, so fair enough.
Exactly. He said he wasn't too unhappy with the fact that they don't have to play again this weekend, and they'll have the full squad back. Finally, for now, the Irish news. We've got Hartfield's Donegal could have fielded for semi-final, so Mickey Hart says that a bunch of counties have traditionally fielded their under-21 team, and Donegal should have fielded for their semi-final. And then Celtic hope to confirm new signing in coming days. Full details on that story on offtheball.com and the Mickey Hart comments. And here, NFL playoffs, 5 takeaways from the divisional round. The last picture we're going to see of Lamar Jackson in action this year, because the Baltimore Ravens crashed out in stunning fashion against the Titans on Saturday night. We'll talk about all those games. If you missed it, and I know a lot of people probably have missed it, Green Bay last night beat the Seahawks despite a comeback from Russell Wilson, and the other game before that was a wild 51-31 win for the Kansas City Chiefs. Right, rugby next. We're going to talk about this man and his battle with Caelan Doris. It's man of the match yesterday, Max Deegan.
We just saw that they're only one score behind us, and like you said, it looked great. It looked like we were on top the whole time, but we were still only 7 points ahead at half time. So we knew if we didn't come out strong in the second half, that this game could change completely and could be out of our hands. So all the players were just kind of focused on a fast start, really accurate start in the second half, and the fact that we didn't concede anything in that second half was really pleasing from a player's point of view. We've always been looking for the top seed in the competition since day one of the year. So we knew we were going to have to, if we wanted to get that top seed, win every game, and so we'll be looking to do the same next week. We'll be focusing on a short week this week and kind of hitting the ground running, and just looking for the win next week.
Right, it's the best travelled man in sports commentary, Alan Quinlan, fresh from La Défense. Nice place.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Were you there for the rave afterwards?
I saw a little bit of it, yeah. The disco was starting there. It's a phenomenal stadium. I was blown away by it, to be honest. It was the first time there. So it was, it's phenomenal stadium.
And with a team to match. They're a good team.
They're a very good side. They've obviously huge depth in the squad as well. Eoin, I thought, was a loss for them, particularly against Munster, because of his influence and knowing Munster as he does, and Zebo as well, probably a loss for him. But they've so much cover and quality and power off the bench. I thought their bench made a massive impact when they came off the bench, and they just overpowered Munster. Critical moment when Munster went ahead, I think. They had a number of phases between the 22 and the 10-yard line, and I think Niall Scannell lost the ball in contact. And I just sensed at that stage, and I said it in commentary, that Munster actually had it in their hands, in their grasp, just got a little bit sloppy, retreated into themselves a little bit, and I thought the game management there could have been a little bit better. Racing up the field, put on the pressure on that crossfield kick. They had a penalty coming from it. But the crossfield kick then to Teddy Thomas, and they score, and Munster just got deflated then, and they got on the front foot a little bit, and they're very, very dangerous when they're on the front foot.
It does seem though like there was a gulf in class, that even in the first half Munster were hanging on. I know they go ahead in the second half and they have those pressure points, but they're playing at the pin of their collar, and Racing are within themselves at that stage.
Well, to be fair to Munster, I think they started the game incredibly well. But what the difference here, Ger, is that little bit of natural brilliance and creativity. Someone like Vakatawa can be unstoppable no matter what you do. And Munster defended and scrambled so well in defence at times, and they were hanging on. But there was big moments then where they turned the ball over when they were hanging on, and obviously the Conway intercept. It just had that sense that they were doing everything right.
Might happen.
So we questioned them last week, the intensity and that effort level and losing collisions, but they brought so much pride, effort level, which, you know, is understandable when your backs are to the wall.
It is, but you go back to Paul O'Connell always saying, let's be world class at the stuff that doesn't require talent. That's my expected baseline for how they perform. But I think the point you made last week about them just not being good enough, that's the key point still, that the forwards aren't good enough over 80 minutes. Either you take the starting pack and the bench, they're not good enough to win a game in Paris against Racing at the moment, are they?
Yeah, it's just that power, and it's that quality, and it's that depth in the squad that's not there. And like I said, you know, they'd 14 internationals started the game yesterday, but some of those guys have only 1, 2, 3 caps. They're not regular starters, and you know, the hand they're dealt in the squad they have at the moment,
and that's
they
it.
try to improve and stuff. And
but this is where they are, right?
That's the point. This is where they are at the moment. And to be fair, with their, you know, with the 23 they have, they'll win most games at home, and they'll be very, very competitive, like they showed away in Saracens, like they showed yesterday. And the scoreline flattered a little bit in the end there, but they stopped Racing for long periods in that game and really frustrated them. And they're the critical moments when the pressure comes on. That's where that little bit of international class and that experience and that control and that ability to make really good decisions, protect the ball well, comes into play. That's the difference in the step up. So unfortunately Munster don't have enough of that. And that natural creativity, like I said, with Teddy Thomas, Imhoff, Vakatawa, Finn Russell, when he got on the front foot, you know,
the scrum half,
he was brilliant. Yeah, Ibrahim was brilliant.
That pass is like an all-time
and the
great
power
pass.
off the bench, Gomez Sa coming on, and Collinga, two powerful specimens, and they made a lot of tackles, a lot of carries, and it was just Munster got a little bit tired and fatigued, and that was the worry beforehand, that power, they wouldn't be able to live with it. But
do you think it's reasonable, Alan, to expect that Munster could get into a position in a couple of years where you have former academy prospects coming off the bench to make a real difference in these games? Because clearly those prospects aren't there at the moment if you're relying on the likes of Clute and Botha to come on and change a game like that, which I would say that they're probably not capable of doing.
Yeah, I think so. That would be the ideal situation where you get Jack O'Sullivan, Fineen Wycherley, Gavin Coombs, John Hodnett, these guys who've been very prominent in the 20s in the last number of years. Ben Healy's a very good player. Jake Flannery, Jonathan Wren, Shane Daly. So there is 7, 8, 10. Craig Casey can be a phenomenal scrum half. I think he has that ability to do that. So there is some young players and quality prospects coming through, something that maybe in previous years we questioned. They're not fully ready yet, and it's about depth in the squad, and it's about having that strength off the bench. Carberry and Byrne are a massive loss there as well. So I think it's an issue for sure, and it's something that, for me, if you're going to have overseas players there, they've got to be
world class.
You know, the Scott Fardy type
or something,
impacts that they make, and unfortunately there's a few there in Munster, and they're just not making that required impact. So if they're not, well, then you're better off with Jack O'Sullivan's, Gavin Coombs, these kind of guys, John Hartnett.
Yeah, and we were talking about that a little bit earlier on. Wycherley is in the concussion protocol at the moment, so
yeah, and in fairness,
like,
he's
right there.
A very, very good player. But and it's hard. They're not producing beasts who can, you know, overpower and outmuscle people. But I thought, look, in fairness.
Can I ask you about John Klein in the first half and that mistake that he made? That's the type of one that frustrates everybody when you're playing, where things are going your way. It's just a mental error.
It is, yeah. And I thought, look, to be fair to Klein, he's had his critics. I thought he was brilliant for Munster yesterday. He was making so many tackles, clear outs, carries. He's not the most skillful. He gives the pass, the wraparound pass near the end, where Munster were near the 22 and they end up back near the halfway. They went back and gathered it up. Niall Scannell did one of those as well. So it's that little bit of accuracy. But that was stupid from him, but who am I to talk about that? You know, I could have done something like that myself. It was just a little bit of a stupid move. They're 9-0 up, and you're giving away an easy 3 points there, where Racing weren't in the game at all at that stage. It was all Munster.
No, you were putting doubt in their heads.
Yeah, so it was, you know, it was a crucial kind of a mistake. But there was a couple of big decisions in the game as well. That when Chris Farrell nearly scored, he got wrapped up by Vakatawa. He did brilliantly. Then they have the scrum, they get a penalty from that for offside, play a ruck or two, and then Conor Murray passes to Billy Holland. There was a hand came straight out. It was a knock on, but it should have been a penalty.
Yeah, it was a scrum.
It could have been a yellow card. It could have been a...
You sound more positive this week than you were last week.
Yeah, because you know what, Ger, and I'll be honest about it, people can question me and say, well, it's more the same of braveness and well done, patting on the back, and some will argue that that's not good enough. Munster should be. But like, Munster have no divine right to be a great team or just because of the past or whatever. So I'll always give credit where credit is due. And like you said at the start, the Paul O'Connell thing, well, for me, it's a given that you turn up in a Munster jersey and that there's passion, pride, effort level there, and it means something to you. So when they do that, I find it hard to be critical. Of course, we can pick holes in the tactical side and the quality and the natural brilliance that you want, that excitement, and that, like, we can't get away from the fact that they've scored 8 tries in 5 games. Montpellier have scored 7, who have thrown in the towel a long time ago. So essentially, Munster are 19th in the try-scoring chart. So that tells its own story, that there's not enough of power, creativity. And in fairness to Stephen Larkham, and they did try again yesterday to be expansive, and they tried to hit good lines, and you know, Racing defended very, very well when Munster attacked, and they just don't have that individual brilliance. So, of course, there's loads you can talk about, depth, quality, where they are at the moment, but I just find it hard to be critical. And when I was critical against Munster a number of years ago, it was down to just guys walking a little bit and not showing what it means to them, you know, because there's probably only 3 or 4 teams that can win Europe at the start, 5 maybe. Yeah. Munster are on the next level, so they were always going to find this pool difficult. And, you know, again, Saracens gave them a lifeline with the salary cap scenario and a weakened squad in Limerick and maybe a stronger squad in London. But, you know, they needed to... you need to win 3 home games and 1 on the road. It's always
That hasn't happened.
a starting point for me in Europe if you want to get to the knockout stages. So it's disappointing again.
In the end, Leinster hammered Leon 42-14, but it was much closer than that score suggests for the majority of the game. Not that Leon were ever actually going to win the match, but they were only 7 behind at half-time, and it took a bunch of yellow cards in the second half. Toulouse obviously went to Connacht and won to end their interest in the competition, and Ulster still live against Bath next weekend as well. We'll tell you what games we're doing live and off the ball during the week when we get the full details on those. But just to talk about, we heard from Max Deegan, there was a clip played there. Deegan and Doris are now neck and neck for Leinster in the number 8 role, and yet the substitution happened yesterday and the 6 went off and Deegan stayed on. Deegan and Doris played together. These two are like the same age, roughly. I mean, at the end of their careers, we will always say they're roughly, I think there's 18 months between them. Can they both play in the same team, and how do you make that happen?
Yeah, of course you can. They're 2 absolutely quality players, and they're very, very athletic and talented. They're good readers of the game, and it's amazing because a couple of weeks back, pre-Christmas, Doris seemed to be the one that was the preferred starting number 8. Jack Conan is out injured at the moment. He'll have something to say when he comes back, but to have that kind of quality and energy and talent going neck and neck is a brilliant proposition for Leo Cullen. They've so many good back row players, and you have to be impressed with Deegan, the way he's kind of taken hold in the last few weeks and grabbed the jersey back off Doris. Of course they can play together. 8s, 6s can play.
Is like if you're managing Max Deegan's career now and you're up against Doris, because Gavin Cummins is making the point, Doris seems to be the specialist. He doesn't play 6 or 7, but that Deegan is very adaptable and as a footballer. Do you tell him try and become a 7, try and become a 6? What do you do?
I don't think either of them will become 7s, natural 7s anyway. Of course you could play them there in certain games, but I think they're both number 8s. For me, 6s and 8s can play.
Do 6s not need to be beasts now?
They're I don't think so. I think they're still very, very big guys. Like, they're not small guys at all. So for me, an 8 can jump in 6 very easily, whereas sometimes a 6, if they're not a good footballer, they might struggle a little bit to become a number 8. They're very good readers of the game. So for me, going from 8 to 6 is much easier.
Right.
The role is obviously a little bit different. You probably have to be a little bit tighter and can freely kind of roam around, like number 8s can do that a little bit. So it's no issue for me, either one of them going there.
Is there a possibility we're entering the phase where the games are so attritional? Just reading about a couple of the Racing guys. One of them came back from the World Cup at 23 stone and wasn't allowed to play again until he got down to 20 stone. There's another guy who's like 24 stone. That if you go through these hits constantly, that actually what you need is 2 players in every position, and that these 2 could actually help.
That's the point where Leinster can do that, and they can make 14 changes before the Northampton game at the start of December, go to Glasgow, who have nearly a full side, and Leinster won that Pro 14 game. They can be fresh then, and it's a lot of what the English give out about a lot, particularly with Europe, that the Irish provinces can do that. Munster can't do that, so they don't have enough of the gap between the starting team. I think Munster's starting team and is a very, very competitive team and will beat most teams. But then if you come up against the Leinsters, the Clermonts, the Racings, the depth they have is significant. So you do need it. And in an ideal scenario, what Leinster have is they're not going out signing players, they're actually producing them.
Yeah.
There's so much...
Which means when they do sign, you have to be really good.
Yeah, there's so much competitiveness within the squad as well, so there is depth in so many different positions.
Is that something, though, that like from an Ireland perspective, you look at these 2 coming through and you go, okay, these are going to be our number 8s. In 18 months' time, these 2 are going to be our first choice number 8s.
One of them could be in a couple of weeks.
Possibly, but and you tell them both, we don't have a first choice. Whoever's the best for them that week's going to play. But like, you're equal. Is there any way that becomes a thing where we appreciate the fact that we're going to manage your minutes? You know, one of you, if we ever reach a World Cup final, one of you will play the semi-final, one of you will play the final, the other one's going to be on the bench, and that's just the way it is, lads. But that will change.
Modern players have to get in their head, because you know, back when I played, if you weren't selected, you were essentially dropped or not picked. Now it's just a very common thing that you're not actually being dropped. It's rotation, and that you'll come on for 20 or 30 minutes a day, and it could flip over the following week, and that's where you want to be. So that's just the way the modern game is gone, that there is so many games, and it's about impact. It's never been, in the last number of years, the bench scenario is just phenomenal. They're not subs, they're impact players who are coming on, and obviously the more strength and depth and the more internationals you have on your bench, it lends to a real impact of coming on.
The first 15 is very important on match day, but actually week to week, who the starter is might not be clear. And,
and you don't have that in every position.
No.
You just, it's impossible.
James Ryan will start wherever he's fit.
Yeah, and you know, Tadhg Furlong nearly starts all the time. Because Porter's an international, he can step in there and nobody blinks an eye, like away in that Northampton game, the first game. So Leinster can do that. Unfortunately, Munster can in a couple of positions, but if they get injuries, you know, they're struggling, and you know, you could pick their team pretty much from the outset. And what it also does is keeps guys on their toes. So if you're coming on for 20 minutes and you know that you've got to do something here, it does really focus the mind. I know every sub coming off a bench at any stage wants to do well and wants to show the coach that he's a good player, but when that mindset is, particularly that the player doesn't think he's dropped, he's maybe frustrated that he's not starting, if that makes sense. So that is really vital, and that's where Munster need to try and get to, so they have a real competitive edge, because it makes a huge difference in training as well. We had so much depth when I played in Munster, like the second string pack would hate to be called a second string pack, but you could nearly pick, because there was probably 7 internationals starting for Ireland. I was probably the one who didn't start, and I would have went back a lot from the Ireland squads and went away to Edinburgh on a Friday night or went to Cardiff on a Saturday, and ended up looking around saying, well, Mick O'Driscoll is there as well, Freddie Pucciarello, Frankie if he wasn't with Ireland, and saying...
She's done like Ryan as well.
Yeah, or Niall Ronan and James Call and these kind of fellas, when you know this is a team we're going to win here in Edinburgh, we can win here in Edinburgh, and we usually did.
Yeah.
So we had that kind of depth in that second string, and then we went training Monday morning, and both sets of packs trying to kick the shit out of each other, and it was really aggressive and energetic, and the guys in the first team, the perceived starters, knew that if they didn't turn up with the right attitude or a bit sloppy, they could easily lose their place. So that's where you want to get to, but it's very difficult. You can't just produce players, and unfortunately that's probably been the issue for Munster. They just haven't produced enough of homegrown players.
No, the structures need to be in place.
Well, it's structures and it's numbers as well, Jerry, you know, to be honest. And, you know, we've probably spoken about it so many times. There is... for any coach to get in a position where you just have guys coming across your table and they're quality players, it's a brilliant place to be.
No, totally. Alan, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. 2 minutes past 8. Plenty more coming up in the next hour. Mike Carlson, James Pearce on Liverpool, the top 5 stories this morning, and Kevin Kilbane on ice. Back after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. OTB Gold, the very best of off the ball.
Are you crazy?
This is OTB Sports Radio. This week on OTB Gold.
When I was 13, 14, I was playing on about 13, 14 teams at the
I was
time.
never as heavy as I was. I was 10 stone 11, and to lose that 7 pounds was torture.
I never looked at it as a crime town. I was never scared to go any place.
I said I want to be as great an athlete as I can be, and I can't be that here.
You may say, why is he always talking about whites and blacks? Because everything happened to me is racial. It's all based on race and religion.
OTB Gold, the very best of off the ball. Weekdays from 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. This is OTB Sports Radio. OTB AM.
Yes, an absolutely seismic night for Irish football last night. We had Kevin Kilbane making his debut on the ice on Dancing on Ice live every Sunday night. He made it through to the second round, but we've got a bit of an issue here, because I'm not sure if has anybody watched Dancing on Ice before, but I certainly haven't. This dude here, John Barrowman, referred to Kevin Kilbane's performance last night like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz. So straight away we're cancelling this guy, John Barrowman. I don't like this guy whatsoever. This guy, public enemy number one, a bit of a dick to be quite honest with you, John Barrowman. Let me tell you why you're wrong, John, about this performance last night from Kevin Kilbane. This is how he enters the ice for anybody who missed it last night. Unbelievable elevation off the ground straight away with a group of unidentified fans carrying him onto the ice. Now, they say men can't multitask, but Kevin Kilbane is no ordinary man, because look at this multitasking, a display of brilliance. Here he is ice skating while balancing a football on his neck. Here he is ice skating while holding a football in one hand alongside his partner. Here he is dancing on ice while throwing a football to his partner. See how easy it is? It's not that easy. I can do it while actually catching a ball here in studio. Here he is on ice while watching his partner hold a football. A multitasking masterclass from Kevin Kilbane. Here he is pulling off what is known in ice skating circles as the Shea Given manoeuvre. A safe pair of hands there from Kevin Kilbane. This, everybody, is the money shot. So gets the ball, throws it up, boom, right off the head, off the ice. Incredible. The cleanest header Kevin Kilbane has ever performed live on British television. But the key to ice skating, everybody, is in the hips. Here he is pulling off an incredible 45-degree angle with his left hip. Here he is doing the same with his right hip. The last time somebody 42 years of age tried to do that, they dislocated their hip. So an incredible manoeuvre from Kevin Kilbane. Here they are performing the shin breaker. Again, you know, studs up there, VAR not proving its worth in the modern era. And then finally here, the money shot again. This is the Titanic, as they like to call it. Except the Titanic was taken down by ice. Kevin Kilbane is most certainly conquering the ice. This is the intimate moment himself and his partner shared at the end with a big wide smile at the end. So screw you, John Barrowman. At 4.5, this guy's going right to the top. This is not the work of a tin man. This is the work of a genius.
Coming up, we're going to hear from the man himself around about 8:30 this morning. Our top 5 stories this morning are Kilbane on ice, Dublin ref abuse. This is the referee getting abuse after the game against Longford at the weekend in the O'Byrne Cup. Manchester United against Norwich, plenty to get our teeth into in that one. Adamida making a full debut for them, but not good enough to help Norwich do anything other than get absolutely pummeled on that one. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer getting a lot of heat for how he talked in the aftermath of the game. Sergio Aguero setting the records, now better than Thierry Henry, now the best overseas player ever in the football history. It is English football history, it's not just the Premier League era. And GAA pre-season, do we need these games? No one really actually, apart from Mickey Hart at the moment, seems to be coming out saying that we need them. So let's get our teeth into a couple of these stories at this stage. Number one, the main stories that we're going to start with. Kilbane on ice coming up at 8:30. So where do you want to start here on our top 5 stories?
We're going to start with the GAA and the referee abuse. So this was something that's come out as a result of Dublin's fixture with Longford in the O'Byrne Cup at the weekend. Video doing the rounds of the referee taking pretty horrendous abuse, which is something that we're not too unfamiliar with in GAA circles, but I guess kind of seeing it in the cold light of day in a pre-season fixture just shows kind of how ridiculous it is. There's a couple of other GAA stories we want to get into as well. I'm not sure if we're going to bring the video that came from the weekend.
Yeah, just well. there's a health warning about this. If you've got little ears in the car listening to you, some very choice language. This comes from Untitled GAA on Twitter, a video taken from the terraces in the aftermath of the game between Longford and Dublin. Longford win it with a free at the end, but bear in mind that Dublin have taken advantage of the unlimited subs rule and have played a bunch of players who haven't played for Dublin in the past, and it's not the biggest game that you're ever going to see. It's not important by any stretch of the imagination, but this is the reaction of some people in the crowd afterwards. Right, so here's the thing, right? This isn't aimed at the Dublin fans. This is just aimed at fans in general who take this type of stuff too seriously. You can't be at that, and there needs to be serious repercussions. Tommy was saying on Twitter that the GAA should really look into that, and if anybody is identifiable, that they should be banned from attending matches. He said it at Croke Park, but actually you should just have a blanket ban, that there should now be some conversation around self-reporting and self-policing, that this should not be acceptable. But the thing is, it is acceptable, because it happens all over, and it's not just GAA, it happens in soccer. This is like endemic in Irish sports culture is the right to go and use language like that and to speak to people who are, remember, particularly in this case, volunteers and amateurs, who are going out on a like actually quite a balmy Saturday in January for a match that's meaningless and taking that level of abuse.
It's not a specific thing about Dublin fans, and it's also not a specific thing I would say about officials in the GAA. They get a fairly hard time from the fans, a particularly hard time, but it's also in some cases players from one's own county or from the opposition county or people's own management in some cases that are just being thrown with a torrent of abuse. It's like once you step into the terrace, once you step into the stands in any GAA ground at the moment, it seems that anybody who's on that pitch is fair game, even though you would have to say that they really aren't. And some of the stuff you hear is absolutely horrific. But you hear it from all different supporters. It's the going rate. If you don't hear vitriol being spouted at a player or an official during a football or a hurling game at the moment, you almost feel like something's wrong because it's just par for the course. Like when you're walking out of that game at the weekend, you might think it's a bit ridiculous because it's Dublin and because they've won so much and because it's a pre-season competition where they've used 1 million substitutions and they really just don't care that much about the game. So perhaps that would be the thing why it's eyebrow raising. But if that was in a championship game, you'd be like, all right, that's normal. You have those words being used about a referee, and that's not okay. That's not acceptable that we just kind of accept that this is what happens at GAA games.
Yeah. Why?
I guess it's just always been the way, hasn't it? Like, I don't know why it's always been the way, but I certainly can't remember a time when there would not be abuse hurled at a ref or abuse hurled at players. Like, I would like to think that perhaps the abuse thrown at players and stuff like that isn't as bad as, say, the abuse hurled at referees. I think the referee thing is just sometimes seen as kind of...
socially, morally acceptable.
Yes. Which it isn't, but like the sort of where am I going to channel my anger towards at this moment in time? And sometimes people just point at the referee and they take the brunt of it, and like it's fairly embarrassing. And like whenever these sort of moments happen, that like it doesn't reflect.
And this is
well
at the
on
lower
a group
end.
of
This
players.
is at the lower end of the scale of stuff that we've seen. Like we've seen referees be chased off. We've seen referees be followed into the referee rooms. And like I don't know if there's a separate entrance for the referees. If that's like if every county ground needs to have a bit of renovation work done, so the referee can exit to a different area, and there's like a guaranteed Garda presence, which automatically protects. I mean, look at the situation that we're thinking about or entertaining, so that this person who referees a game that's very difficult to referee can actually feel safe doing their gig. We've reached a level of insanity where we're like, oh, we just have to accept that that's the way that the fans are going to behave. Like it's not. We don't have to accept that. You can actually change that culture. I know that they have the give respect, get respect. Is that the GAA one, or is that the football one? That's soccer. There's generally been a message to try and respect the referees over the last couple of years that has kind of been seeded out. Give respect, get respect. It's that one. But there needs to be a proper like conversation about this. What is it about Irish sports fans that make you think that it's okay to use that type of language? I don't mind you booing when a referee makes a decision you disagree with, right? That's fine. That's like a bit of cut and thrust. But the aftermath of the game, to go down and blame the referee, the stupid level of incoherent rage and anger that speaks to, like what type of idiotic person, particularly in an O'Byrne Cup match, when it's Dublin against Longford, and they've used 20-odd subs.
I would be at pains to stress here, though, that like if that's in a championship match, it's not acceptable either. If that's just because it's no Burn Cup, doesn't it makes it more ridiculous.
It's so ludicrous.
It makes it more ludicrous. Don't get me wrong.
It's so out there. It's like such a. But it's on a spectrum, and the spectrum is the chasing the referee off after the Loud game.
Yeah.
Like, and that's not, obviously that's a decade ago exactly, but we've seen it happen at club games, and you do hear about the abuse. We had a piece up on offtheball.com during the summer about the abuse that soccer referees are suffering at like Sunday league level. I don't want to name any of the leagues in case I got the wrong one there, but like it's endemic in Irish sports culture, and this is the latest edition of it. And like, something everybody just needs to kind of put their hands up and say, okay, we've all been a little bit guilty of allowing this to happen. What can change and what would happen? What would need to change for it to happen?
Well, it's interesting. Like, I mean, Pat McNaney's been on the record before saying the exact same thing, that it is a culture change that is needed. Like, after referees have been attacked in the past at GAA games, because that is what the next step up is here. But it's not really the next step because it's already happened. We've seen referees getting attacked before in GAA matches, and it is kind of an overhaul. It's a very hard thing to change a culture, though, and it's the easy out for supporters. It's the easy scapegoat, and the vitriol that comes with that is shocking in some cases when they have that red mist descending. So it's not pretty. It doesn't reflect well on Irish society or of how GAA fans. And I, like, again, just a pain. This is kind of, I would say, a wider problem than just one group of supporters. I think it's a bad indictment of where GAA fans are at the moment, that this is the targeting and the stuff they're sort of saying to referees after games. Yeah, it's pretty grim. It's look, if you've got any stories for us out there that you want to share about your referee experience, you can use the hashtag OTBAM. We're going to talk a bit more about the actual situation with regards to the pre-season competitions and how they've really been thrown into disrepute. Some great comments from Billy Morgan after a Sigerson game, which we'll get to a little bit later on the show as well. If you've got a view on that, we'd like to hear from you. That's coming a little bit later on. Aston Villa's 6-1 defeat to Manchester City, though, was live on Off the Ball yesterday afternoon. Here's Stephen Hunt talking about Sergio Aguero.
Is he now the greatest striker that's ever played, foreign striker that's ever played in the Premier League?
Yeah, well, you can look at it two ways. You have the Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods scenario. He's got the most majors, but is he the best ever player? Tiger Woods is. I think Sergio might be that at the moment. I think he probably won't be the best player ever to play as a striker in the Premier League, but definitely the best goal scorer and way up there in terms of goals, what you think when he first come to the Premier League he was ever going to get. But then after a while, bang, all these goals started happening. He finds the groove. He's still finding the groove now at 31, so he's probably got another 50 goals in the Premier League, 60 goals to get, and then he'll be off.
Interesting to look at two players there that have maybe struggled to find a bit of form in this Manchester City team, but they stood out today. João Cancelo, the right wing back, or he's played at right back, and also Rodri, who's the man, I suppose, who's meant to take over the throne from Fernandinho. What did you think of their performances today?
Yeah, I thought both were excellent. Cancelo going down the right, made some good lines, played some good through the lines. Possession-based football when he come inside off the line. I thought he was excellent. I think Rodri was really good today in terms of on the ball, kept taking over, was in good positions to stop them playing. I suppose he didn't have much of that to do, but was excellent. I think against better teams, Rodri will be tested better than what we did today, and there's more pace in other teams to hurt him. So today was a case of Man City with the ball were outstanding, never really got tested without it.
Yeah, never really got tested at all, so things looking pretty bleak for Aston Villa. Things looking okay from a Manchester City perspective in terms of their form, and their focus now is obviously on the Champions League, because it looks like the Premier League is done and dusted, although you wouldn't know that from listening to Jurgen Klopp's post-match interview after the Spurs game. And it's to that match that we're turning now. I'm delighted to say we've got James Pearce of The Athletic with us this morning. James, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Yeah, Jurgen Klopp very careful, very reticent to say, oh, look, this is done and dusted, because obviously he can't do that. We can do that, though, because they keep racking up these performances, they keep racking up the wins, and they are an unstoppable juggernaut.
Yeah, they really are, yeah. I think, it's interesting listening to Jurgen Klopp, and the players are all singing from the same hymn sheet as well. I think, they're desperate to ensure there's not any kind of hint of complacency sneaking in, and of course deep down they know that Liverpool are in an unbelievably strong position, but they also know that until the job is absolutely done, there's nothing to be gained from talking publicly about something that they haven't achieved yet.
There must have been a situation on Saturday night, James, when Liverpool fans must have been thinking this is rather easy, especially at half-time. We'll get into the second half in just a moment, but the situation with which Liverpool found themselves in away from home against a quality opposition at half-time, they must have been scratching their head, thinking how on earth have they found themselves in such a fairly easy position? Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a surreal game, certainly the first half, when you think that that was two teams who faced off in the Champions League final, the biggest game in club football 6-7 months earlier, and there you had Liverpool going to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for the first time and having, I remember checking the possession stats after about half an hour, and they had 80% of the ball, and it was it was attack against defence effectively, and it almost seemed too easy, and it was only really when Tottenham changed their approach and started to show a little bit more ambition in the second half that it was anything kind of resembling a contest. That's interesting, isn't it, that Jose Mourinho would wait until the second half to try and turn that around. Like, is your opinion on it that he just saw something in the first half and made a shift to it, or do you think he was spooked a little bit by Jurgen Klopp from the off?
You know, I think it's a mark of the respect I think that so many rival teams and managers have got for this Liverpool team. That I think there was no great surprise to see Mourinho set his team up like that. We've seen it from him time and time again, and in the past he has had joy against Liverpool by with that kind of low block and then getting everyone almost packed inside their own half to limit space for Liverpool's attacking players and then try and get something on the counter attack. But I think the difference with this Liverpool team is that they can hurt you in so many different ways. I think Jurgen Klopp talked about unpredictability last week, and I think Liverpool have got that. They've got that in abundance with the two fullbacks. They've got that with the midfielders, and they've got it with the front three. That they can. It's very difficult to come up with a plan to stop this Liverpool team, and that's why they've done something that no team has ever done in any of the 5 major European leagues, and that's take 61 points out of the first 63 on offer.
I did see some of the amazing stats as well about how Liverpool's 61 points that they've got so far this season is more than they would have got was it the last time that they reached the Champions League final? That time that so the 61 points.
2004-05, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and here we are, the 13th of January today. It's a phenomenal achievement, and they've been in phenomenal form, not just for this season but also for last season, which gets a little bit overshadowed because of obviously how well Manchester City played to win the title. But they've been on such a run at this point that they're reaching a stage of perfection in football terms that, like, they're a very different team from the Barcelona team of Pep Guardiola, but they're starting to reach that level of consistent victories that side had. Are there other elements of this that Klopp can use to continue to drive the team forward? That he says the records aren't important, but at some point that must be a motivating factor, as the league will surely be wrapped up in the next 4 or 5 weeks potentially. Then it's going to be something else that needs to drive the team to make sure that the standards remain at the level they're at the minute. Yeah,
well, I think the massively positive thing for all Liverpool fans is that you look at the club and it's in such a healthy state on and off the pitch. Everything does look in place for this to be a real golden era. I don't think anyone kind of looks at this season as some kind of one-off. I mean, it's not. The fact that they got 97 points last season. They almost seem to be rewriting the record books on a weekly basis at the moment. And you look at the age of these players, and probably with the exception of James Milner, the vast majority of the squad have still got their best years ahead of them. Probably the most important signing Liverpool have made in the last few years was before Christmas, Klopp committing himself to the project until 2024 as well. So he's on board. The whole structure running through the club, we saw that with the way in which the young players performed when they stepped in for that FA Cup tie against Everton. This is unprecedented in the history of a club that has enjoyed remarkable success going back into previous decades, and it kind of really whets your appetite, I think, for what they could go on to achieve in the coming years.
Obviously, a few players might leave. Maybe Salah decides that he wants to go and spend some time in Madrid. Maybe Mane does. Who knows exactly what the future holds? But they certainly their ability to buy players and to regenerate the squad has been excellent over the last number of years. You've got a really interesting piece in The Athletic where you just watched Virgil van Dijk for the entire day to see exactly how he interacted with everybody else around him. And I wonder, is Van Dijk different now from the Van Dijk that we saw at Southampton and Celtic? Obviously, he's older and more experienced and more confident because of the success that he's had. But how much of it is down to the environment that he came into, and how much of it is the environment inspiring him to get better?
Yeah, I think the environment's got an awful lot to do with it. I think you look at that Liverpool squad, and it's absolutely full of personal stories of amazing development. And that's testament to Klopp and his coaching staff and their ability to develop talent, because Virgil van Dijk, he was a relatively late developer in football terms, in terms of proving he could deliver at the absolute highest level. And it was interesting hearing him speak recently about how he felt that he just facing the likes of Salah and Mane and Firmino on a daily basis at the Melwood training ground, it helped him kind of elevate his game. Because again, it was a bit of a strange experience. I was asked to just watch him during the game at Tottenham on the weekend for my article, and it was fascinating, to be honest. I had no idea just quite how kind of verbal and how much of a leader he really is in terms of, he's absolutely non-stop in terms of talking to those around him and organising. And yeah, I thought he was absolutely immense yet again at the weekend.
Yeah, that's the intangibles that we don't know about. And then there's obviously all the rest of the stuff that we do see, his pace and his power and his heading ability and all that kind of stuff as well. But it's the ability to read the game that kind of came through very clearly as well, where what looks like is going to be a difficult situation. No one ever sees that it's a difficult situation because Virgil van Dijk has, shifted his body position, has made an early run, has got there before the ball arrives, and has made it all look very easy.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think that was one of the things that struck me was that he very rarely has to break into a sprint. Virgil van Dijk, I think he looks upon it as almost like a personal affront when he has to get a sweat on, because his positional play and his reading of the game is so good that 9 times out of 10 he's in the right place at the right time. And it was amazing how many times a cross came into the box and a ball was drilled across the face of the area, and he was in exactly the spot there to deal with it. And even when Liverpool were losing their heads a little bit second half, it was all getting a bit frantic. He was the one ice cool, demanding a greater show of composure from those around him. And yeah, I think there's been recruitment that's been at the heart of this Liverpool transformation under Klopp, and they've bought incredibly well. But there hasn't been a more important deal than the £75 million they paid for Virgil van Dijk.
It's interesting. It's very curious to think about what the future now holds, not just for Liverpool, but the context of the Premier League going into the next season and the season after that, James, because we all know it's a copycat league. We all know that Liverpool and Manchester City are clearly playing the best football, and it's hard to kind of detract from that duopoly for a time. And you look at Manchester City yesterday, you look at Sergio Aguero becoming the top foreign goal scorer, and then I guess Liverpool just come up with another reminder of the fox in the box that they have in Roberto Firmino on Saturday night. And there's been so much said about him as a fantastic number 9 for Liverpool, is the way he holds up the ball, and then you see what he can do with both of his feet and that finish, and it's just sublime. And this is the level of quality we're talking about here, that when the dust has settled, when we're talking about this team in a while, we are going to be talking about these players in the air that people were talking about Sergio Aguero yesterday. Yeah.
Firmino for Liverpool is. He's had a relatively lean start to the season, but certainly in the past 5 or 6 weeks he's scored some really, really important goals for the club, not least to help them win the Club World Cup over in Qatar before Christmas. And Liverpool fans are absolutely blessed to have that front three, and they have an uncanny knack as well of all delivering at different times and stepping up and taking responsibility when it's really needed. And it's going to be fascinating to see what happens now going forward in terms of we don't know whether Pep Guardiola is going to stay around at Man City long term. Is he going to be up for the fight to try and get back this title that it looks like he's going to lose to Liverpool? But I think what we do know is that it will be a two-way fight next season, because I don't think there's. Leicester have had a fantastic season under Brendan Rodgers, but a couple of dodgy results recently, and I think the reality is that Liverpool and City are in a class of their own, and this time around Liverpool have just been far too strong for them in a season when City have had some problems. But I think you can guarantee that City will be back and desperate to try and wrestle it off them again next season.
James, last question for you. We've been talking about this a good bit over the last week or so, just at the start of the year. Is it possible they can go the Premier League season unbeaten and become the new Invincibles? Is it less or more likely at this point now, do you think?
I think when you see them, tick another one and tick another box, I genuinely thought that they could have before going down to London on the weekend, I thought that was one of those ones that you kind of circle as a really tricky game, knowing what Mourinho's like and his ability to spoil a game and upset the apple cart. So yeah, I think you do. We were talking about it with a few colleagues on Saturday night, and you do start to think at this stage, well, who exactly is going to beat them? Of course, they've got to go to the Etihad. That's probably the one that you look at. But this Liverpool team they've won games so impressively in so many different ways this season. They've sparkled at times, demolishing Leicester like they did on Boxing Day. They've dug deep and ground out wins when not at their best, like they did against Tottenham. So it's going to take a real Herculean effort from anyone, I think, to stop them. They've got obviously Manchester United coming to town this weekend, and then Wolves away. That will be a tricky one on a Thursday night at Molineux. But when you see this Liverpool team and the depth of talent, and also the reinforcements on the way with Fabinho coming back from his injury, you do start to think it is a realistic target for them to emulate that great Arsenal team and to be invincible this season.
Yeah, it's a real target for them indeed, and one that they actually absolutely have within their grasp at the moment. James, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million, man.
Cheers.
James Pearce there from The Athletic, giving us his thoughts on the games at the weekend. Some of the football stories that we want to talk about, the fallout from Manchester United, we'll get to that in a minute. But Sergio Aguero broke the records in fairly straightforward fashion against the supine Aston Villa team. So all the stats are there. 177 Premier League goals, 17 headers.
One chested goal, I like that.
It's 33 left foot, 126 right foot.
My favourite part about this whole story is that Pep Guardiola was asked in the post-match press conference, was Aguero the best striker you've ever managed? And he's like, no, Messi is. Just, take the context away from it straight away and pop it back into a global setting. No, you are not the best I've ever managed, but still you're pretty good. Like there's
always been that little tension with Pep, hasn't there? Pep didn't really want to put him in his team. Pep wanted
Gabriel Jesus.
Yeah, or a bunch of other people that he's spent loads of money on to come forward and be the type of centre forward that he wants. And always Aguero kept his head down, said nothing, and came back and scored a goal, and then scored 2 goals, and then scored another hat-trick. And then it was like, drop me now, sucker.
He's one of the most stubborn men in football, Pep Guardiola.
Oh.
And Sergio Aguero, again, showed his own version of stubbornness to actually persuade Guardiola that he was wrong, because it was a certain degree of climbing down from Pep Guardiola, because it seemed that he was set on this Jesus experiment. Now, Jesus obviously hasn't hit the heights that some people would have expected. I still think he's a top-class player, but perhaps not the world-class player that Manchester City thought they would have after a couple of seasons. But Aguero did change his game, in fairness. Like, he didn't fit in to the pressing game without the ball that Manchester City tried to start getting going once Pep came in. But he adapted. He worked a bit harder. He got himself back in the team and then helped him to a Premier League title. He's been brilliant. And like you talk about keeping his head down, saying nothing, he's literally really said nothing. He doesn't do many interviews. He keeps a bit of a distance from life in England, really, it's fair to say. And there's a kind of mystique around that. But I think as a goal scorer, as somebody who's there to finish opportunities off, he's been perfect for Manchester City. And he has to go down as possibly the best we've seen in the Premier League in terms of in the box finishing. Like, Alan Shearer will have something to say about that.
Yeah, so that's the thing. This is like he's now ahead of Thierry Henry in terms of goals scored by a foreigner in English football. Like, Shearer's still ahead as that type of player.
Possibly.
And Henry's ahead as like a footballer. So it's well done. It's an amazing achievement. You've had a fantastic career. You've got like one of the definitive iconic moments of sports commentary in any sport ever. Yeah. Because Martin Tyler lost his shit, and I don't know, in fairness, it was like the end of a fairly. Well, it was their first title, wasn't it? It was Mancini winning their first title. It wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah. It's great. Well done. I don't feel like Thierry Henry needs to suddenly go.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think we're both in agreement on that. But I'm not sure about the Shearer take. I'm not 100% sure that if you're picking your dream Premier League team, based on what you've seen anecdotally. Now, granted,
Alan Shearer played for like bad teams for a long portion of his career.
Fair point.
Sergio Aguero has played in one of the teams that creates the most chances in the history of English football, And if you put Alan Shearer in that Man City team, they would win the league every season and they'd be Champions League winners twice already over the same span of time.
Do you reckon?
Alan Shearer was sensational.
This is not a conversation about saying Alan Shearer is bad at football. Of course he was sensational.
Could do all sorts of things that Aguero can't.
In my opinion, Alan Shearer, 100%. Like, there's an argument to be made he's the best Premier League striker of all time. I just think that there is an argument to be made that perhaps he's the third best Premier League striker of all time.
Behind Aguero.
Behind Aguero and Henry. For me, Henry is the best striker that the Premier League's ever had as a footballer, all round. But if we're going to judge Thierry Henry on this metric of, okay, so the statistic doesn't matter because Henry was a better footballer. If you can make that argument, then you can similarly make an argument about Aguero versus Shearer in terms of what you've seen. Now, accept your bad club arguments. It's fair. It's hard to argue against that. He has played for worse clubs than Sergio Aguero has played for. This Manchester City team has been at times utterly dominant, and being the number 9 in that team has been incredible, and it's been such a blessing for him. But I just wouldn't write him off as the second best fox in the box, the second best goal scorer the Premier League has ever seen.
Where's Ronaldo?
Well, if you pick your dream team, like Ronaldo has to be in that dream team, but you would put him on the left of a front three, perhaps, with Aguero in the middle and
Alan Shearer's in the middle. Alan Shearer's in the middle, ahead of Aguero.
And then where are you putting Henry in your team? Is he like on the right in your front three?
Not bad. I'll be happy with that front three. Right, 8:35 this morning here on OTBAM. Last week, Tom Malone travelled to Kilbane and stood in association with Horse Racing Ireland. You can see that amazing footage across all of our social channels. Have a look.
All the public see here, 4 kind of main stallions that they'll come across. Yeah, we're standing 4 stallions here at the moment. Of course, the new boy is Poet's Word, who we're delighted to buy this year. He was an exceptional racehorse. He's a good-looking horse, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of people come to see him. And I suppose for Irish race fans as well, I only actually got one chance to see him in Ireland as well. So it's great, yeah, as a 3-year-old, obviously he won the Beresford as a 2, but I mean, to see him here in his, as you say, natural habitat now, he's just stunning. It's great for fans to be able to come out in the Irish Stallion Trail and see him.
I think this has been one of the great benefits of the trail, because we're getting so many racing enthusiasts who are not necessarily involved in the business, but they'd like to see where have these horses gone.
We're down here with Blue Point, is obviously the new kid on the block down in Kilbane, and so maybe just talk us through what it's been like for him, how sort of arrival from training and what it's sort of the transition from being a racehorse to a stallion is.
By and large, it's usually a very smooth transition, but getting a horse like this off Charlie Appleby was a dream come true for us. Charlie did a great job and his team did a great job with him. All the kinks, wherever kinks he may have had, I think we've gone out of him. He seems to have taken his retirement from racing very well. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Irish Stallion Trail weekend was on last weekend and Tom was out and about having a look. It looks like you had a good time, Tom.
I thoroughly enjoyed myself, yeah. It was really good, just to get the kind of behind-the-scenes access. And as they said a couple of times, you know, we only see racehorses, maybe these flat horses, maybe 2 years in the track, and then you see them elsewhere in their kind of afterlife. You see them in retirement, and they're living in a lap of luxury as well, by the way. It's like
it's a hard life.
Giltown and Kildangan is just stunning places. And like I said, you know,
that was See the Stars wandering around you.
Yeah, so in that little interview, See the Stars, he is quiet as a lamb. He's just walking around us there when we're doing that interview, like total pro. Although they do say once the kind of covering season gets underway, things do get a little more heated around the place, and they get a bit more territorial and a bit louder and
so
stuff
they're only in cover season.
They start around the end of the month, around February time, because it falls in gestation for 11 months, but they have to be born after the 1st of January. So it'd be a massive risk to try and cover Mare at the very start of February.
Right.
And then to get end up, like if they're born the 20th of December, they're a yearling 10 days later.
And
so.
how do the Stallions, I'm sorry about this, but are the Stallions always up for it, or is there like they're at certain times of the year?
Well, John Flood in Boardsmill told us as soon as the first mare walks into the yard, the place just becomes they're very much more aware of it. But even the same, Blue Point was on a parade there. So whatever way the prevailing wind was, there's actually a farm just down the road that has mares.
Right.
And your man Eoin reckoned
he was smelling something on the
wind. Could literally smell them on the wind.
Right.
So yeah. Yes, don't worry, they know what's going on.
It's elemental like that. Right.
Yeah.
8:40 this morning, let's get some news.
Yeah, let's start with rugby. 3 tries in the final 10 minutes saw Munster's European Champions Cup hopes likely ended by Racing Metro yesterday. The Southern Promise fared well for much of the game, helped by Andrew Conway's try and the boot of JJ Hanrahan, but defeat leaves them needing to beat Ospreys next weekend and also other results to go their way. Leinster are now 15 games unbeaten this season, equalling a previous record set 20 years ago. 6 tries saw them storm to a 42-14 defeat over Lyon yesterday, which all but scores a home quarter-final. Despite a 15 straight win this year, Coach Leo Cullen says the side still have plenty to work on.
So we've ticked a lot of the boxes there today. Parts of the performance, like there's plenty to work on for sure, but like in terms of what we needed to get out of today, we're pretty pleased. Reasonably clean bill of health is what it looks like so far as well. So overall game was a little bit stop-start, bit scrappy, but we managed to get the job done, or certainly the players managed to get the job done.
And just another piece of rugby news that broke this morning as well. Ospreys fly half James Hook has announced that he'll retire from rugby union at the end of the season. Former Wales international won 81 caps for his country, becoming their 4th highest point scorer of all time. And he says he wants to become a children's author as well when he retires. Yeah, so always like James Hook, actually, one of my favoured Welsh players. On to football. Manchester City striker Sergio Aguero has been hailed a legend by his former teammate Vincent Kompany after the Argentine set a new record for the most Premier League hat-tricks after he scored 3 goals in City's 6-1 demolition over Aston Villa yesterday. Kompany says his favourite moment will always be Aguero's strike, sealing the title in 2012.
You take away the fact that he scored that many goals. I'm grateful for one goal, when he scored against QPR. You just take that one goal in isolation and is always going to be a legend to me.
Villa, meanwhile, have slipped into the relegation zone. That's after Watford beat Bournemouth at 3-0 yesterday. In golf, Graham McDowell finished strongly at the Sony Open in Hawaii on the PGA Tour late last night. The Polish golfer shot a final round 64 at the course to finish the tournament in a 3-way tie for 4th on 9 under par. Australian golfer Cameron Smith beat American Brandon Steele in a playoff after both players finished on 11 under par. In snooker, Mark Allen takes to the table in round 1 of the Masters at Alexandra Palace this evening. The Antrim Cewist takes on Englishman David Gilbert for a place in the last 8, while 3-time champion Mark Selby went out yesterday. He was beaten 6-4 by Ali Carter. And just some news on racing today at Punchestown. That's been cancelled due to the storm warning, so safety concerns over the status orange wind warning led to the decision after course inspection and consultation with Med Éireann.
All right, good stuff. Thanks very much for that, Tom. More from Tom across the day, of course, on offtheball.com. Now, let's talk NFL. Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson was supposed to be the coming attraction that we've been sold all season for the AFC title game, but it's not happening. Mahomes did his bit with a mix of Joe Montana and Steve Young last night as he put up 51 points against the Houston Texans, but Lamar Jackson got blown up by the Tennessee Titans the day before. Mike Carlson is with us. Mike, good morning to you. How you doing?
A little bit bleary-eyed. The NFL starts these games later this year. The early game didn't start till 3:30 Eastern time, their time, which means the later game starts later and ends later, and I get less sleep. So it's all a conspiracy.
I know the next week the last game is going to kick off at something like 2 o'clock in the morning or 20 to 2, and you're like, this is just... It's too difficult for us NFL fans to bear with it, but it was actually worth it, I suspect. Let's talk about the most recent game then, because if people are just waking up to it, Green Bay are through to face the San Francisco 49ers in Santa Clara next week. How did they manage to see off Russell Wilson? Was it straightforward?
Not completely straightforward, but they did what they usually do, which is to get off to a pretty good start and build up a lead, and they maintained it through the second quarter, which is something they haven't always been able to do. So it was 21-3 at the half. And then Seattle started to come back, but they did get one touchdown drive in the second half, and they held off the Seahawks primarily with a lot of pressure on Russell Wilson. And, Wilson started to do his Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes imitation in the second half, gaining some yards running as well. But they were able to keep that under control. They got a crucial first down at the end of the game, which was pseudo-controversial, but as someone who spent most of the night tweeting about horrible refereeing calls and silly rules and stuff, I actually had no problem with that one. It looked in real time like it was a first down. And really, I think Seattle had no ability to stop Devontae Adams, and that was the biggest part of the game. Whenever Rodgers really needed a big play, he was able to go to Devontae Adams. And the Smith brothers, Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith, both of whom were acquisitions during the or before the season, but in the offseason, really did a great job pass rushing for them, and Kenny Clark played really well. So I think that was the nature of the game, and the home field advantage in Green Bay, and the fact that the later you start a game in January in Green Bay, the colder it gets. No cases of frostbite were reported
so far. Anyway, let's talk about the wild game that happened before that, because one quarter in, it looked like we were all set for another big shock. The Kansas City Chiefs were 21-0 down. It was the most points that Houston had scored in franchise history in the first quarter. Tyreek Hill had muffed a punt. There'd been a blocked punt. Deshaun Watson was playing relatively well. His wide receivers were playing okay. Will Fuller was on the pitch. It all looked like this was set up for something amazing to happen, and then something amazing did happen. Patrick Mahomes woke up and reminded everybody that he is the best quarterback in football and not Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and it was a strange thing, because you couldn't really point to a lot that the Texans had done well in that first quarter, but you could point to a lot of mistakes by the Chiefs, and that's not to minimize the fact Barkevious Mingo made a great special teams play to block a field goal. They had Will Fuller V back, so he can take the top off a defense and make plays, and that lets Kenny Stills make plays. But you would have thought that their Houston defense would be better able to at least contain Kansas City in the second quarter. And of course, they had their own mistake, which was the big fumbled kickoff, where the ball was just popped out and went right to the Chiefs. And Mahomes was clinical. The Texans never adjusted at halftime to how they were going to cover Jason Kelce, the tight end. They kept man covering him, and he kept beating man coverage, and they were double teaming him, and he was beating double teams. And it's very difficult, because you really want to have a safety always playing behind Tyreek Hill, because he can so easily beat the man who's covering him, and that makes it hard to double a second receiver, and that's what Kansas City take advantage of. And it was almost clinical. It was beautiful to watch. Mahomes was in such great form, and my feeling with the Texans was always, if they keep the game tight, Deshaun Watson then can make things happen. He's another, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, who can just make plays out of nothing. And we saw that in the wild card round, where he literally was tackled by two guys and somehow bounced off of each of them and made a big play. But that just wasn't going to happen. It never looked like they were going to get back in the game. Bill O'Brien had, the look of a deer in the headlights, just lost. There was this great moment when they were deciding to go for it on 4th and 1, because Watson wanted to go for it, and he didn't have a play. So they had to call timeout, and then they took a field goal anyway. So it was like combining three worse scenarios. And why an offensive-minded coach isn't ready with a play on that 4th and 1. Can't think of anything he thinks can gain 1 yard. Just was beyond me.
That was 21-0 up as well, as far as I recall. So the panic had already set in. They could see what was going to happen. Like, it's interesting. Like, it's very easy to make the comparison between all these great young quarterbacks at the moment, Mike. But like, I'm sure there was plenty of Kansas City Chiefs fans last year after the AFC Championship game who were unbelievably frustrated after getting beaten again by the New England Patriots. But perhaps 1 year later, Mahomes, I know it's his third season, but it kind of really feels like only his second full season. He's older, he's wiser, and perhaps in a better position now to make the Super Bowl. Is there a similar lesson to be taken for the Baltimore Ravens going into next season? Because Jackson, I thought, was pretty good on Saturday night, but of course didn't get the job done as a team.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's exactly what the case is. They'll look at what they can improve in the off season, which is probably to get themselves more integrated into the downfield passing game. And maybe look for a breakaway kind of runner in simple stuff, small stuff. But the problem in that game was that Tennessee took the lead, an early lead, and then a big lead. And Baltimore's not really designed to come back. If you woke up in the morning and hadn't seen the game and you looked at the stat sheet and you saw that Lamar Jackson had thrown the ball 59 times, you would know that Baltimore had lost that game. It's not what they're designed to do. And you might say, okay, well, maybe Mark Ingram was a little tired. I think one of the big factors probably was the fact that they rested their key players in week 17 and then had the bye week. And I said this in my column last week. You remember when the Colts used to do that and then come out really rusty? It's the question of rest versus rust. And when you have an offense that's it's a power offense, but it depends a lot on timing. It depends on all the pieces clicking neatly together for that run game. And it just didn't look like it was quite there. Jackson was gaining yardage on his own, but Mark Ingram wasn't getting very much done. Gus Johnson. And then, of course, they only carried because they were down. I think Ingram and Johnson had something like 9 carries between them or 12 carries between them, which is not the game they want to play. So I also find it really interesting that, in back-to-back weeks, Tennessee, with all those expatriates coaching and playing, beat New England and then go and beat Baltimore. And it was little noticed, but Dean Pease, their defensive coordinator, was with the Patriots, then with the Ravens, and is now with Tennessee. And it wasn't the same offense, granted, because Lamar Jackson wasn't there, but he knows John Harbaugh pretty well. And they seem to do a pretty good job of controlling that offensive line that literally, for the Ravens, ran over most people.
Lamar Jackson was still really good, though, right? That's the weird part about this. Like, he's going to get criticism for losing a game where he's the best team, and he's had that best season against the Titans, who have 9-7 and really come from nowhere. But I think his reputation is actually enhanced by the quality of performance that he put in. He still tried to carry the fights.
To an extent, yeah. And he can be a one-man show if he has to be. And some of the mistakes there were a lot of incompletions, which if people now go back and watch the highlights, it's going to look like Jackson was on fire. But there were an awful lot of incompletions there. But the interception by Byard went through Mark Andrews' hands. They were dropping stuff, and this was kind of it was kind of the same situation as the Chiefs in the first quarter. Baltimore did everything they could to help Tennessee build up a big lead, and then unlike the Chiefs, they're not really designed to come back from it because they don't play a wide open kind of game. Lamar Jackson can make those plays, but they're not set up to run those plays. They don't really have the personnel to run those plays. Although Hollywood Brown eventually is going to be one of the dominant receivers in the NFL. I think that was an interesting Brown versus Brown battle, AJ Brown and Hollywood Brown, and AJ Brown just needs a better nickname, to be able to get more attention. It also puts it's strange to me. I was watching because there were so many ex-Patriot players involved. It put the Patriot season into a lot of perspective because you have to realize exactly how bad their offense was when you look at their loss to Kansas City, their loss to Houston, their loss to the Ravens, their loss to the Titans. They were in those games. They should have beaten Kansas City. They could have beaten Tennessee. They could have they could have stayed in the game with Baltimore, apart from a fumble by Edelman. So, it's really strange. And then I saw Jason Veld here comes on the field to play, starting at tackle for the Packers. And it's another guy they signed at the beginning of the season. He wasn't ready to play. He was really in retirement, trying to get healthy again. And he came out, and there he is for the Chiefs, starting at right tackle. And playing pretty well for Brian Bulaga, who was sick apparently. So I just thought it was a really instructive weekend and a really good weekend of games, and it sets up two really good conference championship games.
Just one more thing for me on Jackson, Mike. I'm not sure if you're a fan of the artist known as Colin Cowherd, but he was on Twitter on Saturday night saying lots of NFL people who read they should be fired for not drafting Lamar Jackson earlier are having a second cocktail tonight, maybe a third. There's going to be.
I think that was a little extreme and very Colin Cowherd, wasn't it? I don't think Jackson did. I think Jer's right. I don't think Jackson did anything to make anybody think he's not going to continue to be a great quarterback in the league, and someone you can build around. I think you just need to adjust what's around him. Because you have to figure on those situations where you're not going to be playing with a lead and be able to control the ball. And this is one of the things for Tennessee. If Tennessee get a lead on you, it's not like Houston. Tennessee will pound Derrick Henry down your throat. And if they're up by 10 or 13 in Arrowhead and it's not a nice day, they can control long drives, even if they don't score. They're just keeping the ball away from you. They beat Kansas City earlier in the season in Tennessee, admittedly, and it was a wild kind of shootout game. But they could do that. I mean, I wouldn't write them off immediately.
Yeah, I was going to. That's the next thing I wanted to talk about. When you look back at some of those America's games, and you look back at some of the teams who actually would win in blowouts, the Niners teams, the Montana, the Steve Young team in particular, didn't actually have any games once they got out of their division, and once they would beat the Giants or the Cowboys. The playoffs were easy for them. They would just roll over teams in a way that it felt like Patrick Mahomes and his offense just has this ability to drop 50 points really quickly, as we saw. In 3 quarters, they dropped, in 2 quarters, really, they dropped 50 points.
Yeah.
There is a possibility that they might just do that to everybody who's left. And yet, the way Tennessee have just stuck in there the last 2 weeks against very, very good teams suggests that we should actually have a match, right? It's not going to be a blowout.
Oh, no, not at all. It's going to be much harder for them on the road, but of course they've won these last 2 on the road as well. And I think someone pointed out during the commentary that given with the last week of the season when they beat Houston to win to qualify for the playoffs, they would have beaten, if they beat Kansas City, they would have beaten all 4 division champions 4 weeks in a row, all on the road, which would be an accomplishment I don't think anybody's ever done before. But I wouldn't write them off. I think they've got a good thing going with their offense, and Tannehill is playing very, very well. And he doesn't have to do anything really great except make 1 or 2 plays a game. What did he completed 9 passes, I think, against New England and 8 against Baltimore. They threw so he's like 17 for 32 in 2 games. Mahomes did that in a half. It's really bizarre, and I'm just curious to see if they can come out and continue that on the road, because Andy Reid's teams do have a way of getting caught out at times in the playoffs. Remember last year when New England just came in and ran against them and took a lead, and Mahomes brought them back, but then they lost in overtime. They're better prepared to face the run, especially if Chris Jones comes back next week healthy. But it'll be an interesting game. I think people underrate Tennessee's defense a lot, and they played. Even when they give up points, they play really well. And Bayard will get a lot of attention, I think, if he makes a play in that game.
Mike, I'm almost entirely out of time, but we haven't talked about the 49ers defense, which apart from the Kansas City offense was the other most dominant team on display at the weekend. Once they sorted out Akello Witherspoon and took him off the pitch, they were amazing on Saturday. And it goes a bit under the radar because it was such a blowout and their offense weren't great, but their defense was absolutely sensational.
Yeah, and they've got people back healthy that they needed to have back, especially Jaquiski Tart at safety, which lets them do more things with their corners. But that when they played Green Bay earlier in the season, it was a rout. It was a very one-sided game in San Francisco, and I think that was because of their defense. I'm not sure what Green Bay can do to cope with that. I mean, you have to believe in Aaron Rodgers basically whenever Green Bay plays. I thought he actually had a really good game. Dropped a couple of amazing passes in, and yeah. I think San Francisco is going to have to be a solid favorite in that game, but we saw everybody was a solid favorite this past week. And I said, take the Ravens with 4.5 points, and they lost by 4. So, I'm really kind of messed up about that one.
Mike, good to have you with us. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Mike Carlson there, a little bit bleary-eyed this morning after staying up late to watch the Seahawks crash out in Green Bay, which sets up the Packers' trip to San Francisco next weekend. We're going to preview all of those, of course, on The Snap, which is our brand new American football show, which comes at you every Friday afternoon across all of our social channels. It streams live at 1 o'clock, and then it's available for download on podcast immediately after that. You can subscribe to The Snap wherever you get your podcasts, on the Go Loud app, or indeed whatever app you're using. And, of course, we'll also put it up in our highlights section. I presume everybody at this point is subscribe to our highlights section. It is 8:59 this morning. We've still got Kevin Kilbane, Deal or No Deal, and the rest of our top stories coming up. We're going to be back in a minute.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the Ball 2019 IMRO Radio Awards Sports Programme of the Year.
Salah takes the shot. Mo Salah with one of the goals of the season.
Who will see their dreams turn into reality? Whose names will be etched in history forever?
Offtheball.com, best online publisher at the 2019 Spider Awards.
A big breaking story on offtheball.com for you this morning. We have the very latest on the Mayo leaks. We now know what went on in that secretive Mayo County Board meeting.
2019 Irish Sponsorship Awards Best Radio Sponsorship, OTB Super Value GAA Roadshows.
Well, when she comes back, get your arse back here, he said. Starr is out sitting on the swing and Darren O'Sullivan is pushing him.
OTB Sports Radio, live online 24/7 on the Go Loud app.
This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Sport Ireland campus Blanchardstown is the home of Irish sport, not just for our athletes, but for you and the community. For families, check out our kids' camps, sport academies and birthday parties. For adults, why not join our newly refurbished gym with a 50-metre swimming pool, or book one of our world-class indoor or outdoor facilities, including our athletics track, sports pitches and courts. And for companies, check out our team building days, conference facilities and events. All this and more at sportirelandcampus.ie.
OTB AM.
But as a young lad these days, making a debut, how hard it was. Listen, you're making a debut at Old Trafford. It's not hard. He's a young boy. They don't suffer defeat like an older, experienced player does, and they don't take it to heart. He scored a hat-trick during the week. He might come down a little bit off the cloud he's on, but from an Adam Ida point of view, get back on the horse again and you go again. Exceptional young talent, there's a few of them there. It's not easy to hold down the place in any team, Championship or Premier League. So you got to go and you got to be competitive. You try and do your best, and if your best fails, then so be it. That's how I want to see it. How the young players in Ireland should be treated the next 2 or 3 years, treated with care, treated with respect. There are players in the Premier League in England and the Championship that all around the world are trying to play in the league. So they're there for a reason, because they're good players, and let them enjoy it. Not put too much pressure on them, but hopefully they'll come good and they'll fulfil their promise.
Stephen Hunt talking about Adam Ida there, which is obviously one of the top 5 stories that we're talking about this morning. Kilbane and I still to come. Dublin refugees, we've talked about that a little bit earlier on. If you missed it, you can listen back on our time-stamped podcast. Manchester United against Norwich. There was a few bits around this that we wanted to get dug into. Obviously the fact that Adam Ida has now got his full Premier League debut up and running. It's one of those things you want to just tick off and make sure that it happens. Did okay. The team get annihilated. There's not much really you can say about that.
Not really. He had one half chance. He would have done very well to tuck it away. Norwich had an excellent chance just before the break. Todd Cantwell forced a brilliant save from David De Gea. Ida comes close to getting to the rebound, but again, it was going out of play, and that was really it. It's a tough place to be when you're starting your first Premier League game at Old Trafford and Manchester United are on song.
It was Solskjaer's post-match press conference though that was getting most of the heat on Twitter in the immediate aftermath. He was saying things like, you know how far you've come when Manchester City are putting out their full team against you in the Carabao Cup.
That was embarrassing. That is just the worst thing a Manchester United manager has ever said. It's horrific. Like to think that is now the level that Manchester United gauge themselves by. That
David Moyes said some stuff, but go on.
Like, I'm obviously being tongue-in-cheek here, but...
Not much.
Like, I mean, we all know that they've fallen as a power, but, like, do we not all have this notion that that this is a temporary thing for Manchester United, that they will eventually clamber back up that ladder to a position where they're contending for titles within the next few years?
They'll start getting value for the money they're spending on their wage bill. That's all that needs to happen. All that really needs to happen in football in England is that Manchester United get value for the money they're spending on their wage bill, and they'll be fine. They'll be one of the top 3 teams. And football generally follows the money, but it's not following the money in this case.
Let me ask you a question on Solskjaer. When Solskjaer eventually gets sacked as Manchester United manager, how many Premier League clubs will be interested in his services?
I don't know. Is it going to be none? Is that what you're saying?
I would say none.
I mean, yeah, you would expect that the next gig after that would have to be bring a team up and be in charge of a culture, because he's not going to get the Nigel Pearson gigs.
No.
Nigel Pearson's got a gig now.
He's got that niche boxed off.
Wow.
Goodbye, Sam Allardyce.
It's like, and that's like 10 years of getting massive money every year, no matter what you want.
Yeah, he's going to manage in all the shit stadiums around England.
Yeah, and some of the shiny new ones that they're going to build on the back of him keeping them up. I don't know. Probably none, right? Probably none. There might be some championship sides who are like...
So why is he still manager of Manchester United?
Because he is a club legend, and the club have decided that they need a human shield to prevent the fans from properly organising against the management and ownership of the club. So you started to hear some stuff about the Glazers again. You started to hear Ed Woodward begin to be a lightning rod for what the fans think is wrong, and they're not going to blame Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So he acts as like literally a human shield to take all of the crap that's come in the direction of the people behind who are pulling the strings and running the club.
He's a sponge for the criticism, and he is the representation of Manchester United. Like, there was plenty of Glazer out chants at the weekend, and he says that he noticed them. He says, as a club, we've got to stick together. We've got to be united. We are a family. I can only say from when I've been here, I've been backed by the owners, I've been backed by Ed, and they're supporting me. They, the fans, just have to believe me when I say we're doing loads of good things behind the scenes. We're going in the right direction. I'm sure that's pretty hard for a lot of Manchester United fans to actually listen to and fully believe at the moment. Now, granted, it's a big win against Norwich, but we all know what happens next for Manchester United. They lose a game that they're supposed to win, or they draw from a position of dominance in a game or something like that. And you will rinse and you will repeat till the end of the season.
What about Liverpool next?
Well, okay, so it's bizarre almost looking at what's happened over the last month at Manchester United, going from beating Manchester City to losing to Arsenal and then putting in a performance like that, hammering Norwich. Now, I mean, Manchester United are the only team so far this season to take points off Liverpool. Like, this is another strange feather in the cap of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who's got a very strange hat developing there for himself.
Right, well, we got plenty of time to talk about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and the difficulties at Manchester United, but we don't have all that much time to talk about the latest skating sensation. Have a look. What a tan, Kev. What a tan.
Oh, it's still there. It's still there, Jay. Can you see it?
Yes, it never comes off.
I know. I've tried to wash it about 20 times this morning. I'm in and out of the shower. It just won't come off.
You enjoyed it. What are you talking about? You loved it.
Oh, it was good fun. It was good fun. I had a sweat on. I did have a sweat. I wasn't too nervous, actually. I felt okay, but the sweats afterwards, honestly, I was sweating for about half an hour after the show. So anyway, it went okay. So as well as I could have expected, I have to say that, yeah.
Did it make a difference having skated last week in the group and then you got to be individual this week? So you actually got out, you saw the whole thing, like you made your debut the week before.
Yeah, I think it definitely helped having the extra week just to see how it went. Because there was a lot of nervousness around last week. You could see the 6 guys that went last week, very nervy, and the tension that was around it, and I think it definitely helped me. It obviously gave us an extra week to prepare the routine. We had to have 2 routines for last night sorted. So if I was going to be in the skate off, Brianne and I had to have that second one sorted. So anyway, it was better, I feel, anyway, having that week. And luckily enough, we're through. But now we've got less time to work on our next routine. They've all had that extra week that the guys that were through last week to prepare for this weekend coming up.
The odds are stacked against you. How did you feel when your name was called out last night, that you were safe?
That was probably a little bit nervy as well when you're in the middleweight and that little bit of tension. Yeah, they drum it up. So yeah, probably a bit nervy, Owen. Yeah, I think it was certainly a bit like that. Yeah.
Well, hang on a second. You were like smiley, smiley, smiley. Okay, this is grand. And then the lights start going off and off and off beside you, and suddenly they cut to your face, and you're like, there was no smile at that point. There was no hiding it. You were into it, and you were like.
Was that game face?
Game face was gone. You were like, oh shit, I could be going out here.
I know. It did. I honestly, I genuinely expected to be skating off. I thought I'd definitely be in the last one last night, and I'd be going up against Tricia in that skate off. But luckily enough, I didn't have to, so I managed to get that bit of a break, and I could maybe go to the bar and have a beer, so it was okay.
Can I just ask you, Kev, who the hell is John Barrowman, and why is he saying these things about you?
He's coming for me, Eoin. He's coming for me, honestly. Who is he? Who is he? Well, he's a guy from theatre. He's got a history of a history in the theatre, dance, musicals, sing. He's got everything. He's got everything in his locker. So he's coming for me, Eoin.
How many international football caps does he have, Kev?
Well, I didn't want to say that. I can't go throwing that in too early, can I?
They said that the football was a distraction last night. I thought it was. I mean, you were playing to your strengths.
That was the point, though, wasn't it?
And also this whole idea that they were criticising you for Brianne being the boss on the ice. She's a professional ice dancer. You would be stupid to not allow her to be the dancer on the ice. I just think you're using all the available tools you have at your disposal.
Honestly, every one of the pro skaters are the bosses on the ice. So yeah, that was maybe a bit of a ridiculous comment because I as you can clearly see, I'm hopeless. So I've got to actually just lean on her a hell of a lot just to try to get me through last night. So that was kind of how it went.
I think maybe Barrowman's on your side. Maybe it's a bit of tough love that you need. He's the Alex Ferguson that your career needs in this thing.
Yeah, so every single week I've got to be setting my sights on him to prove him wrong. Is that kind of how it is?
Well, I mean, what is your strategy now? Because you're in it. You got to keep going.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what it is now. When I've spoken to you, Jay, to start with, you were always saying to me, Kev, come on, you've got to win this now. Come on, you've got to go with it. So we've just got to roll with it now. The thing is, I was saying before now, we have probably, I think we've got 3 days now to get the routine sorted because we have to perform it for the production team. Probably, I think it'll be Thursday. So we've got today, tomorrow, Wednesday. So we'll have 3 days to get the routine in place because we've got to perform it. So that's going to be the toughest thing because I just trying to get last night's routine absolutely nailed with no mistakes. There's 1 or 2 mistakes, of course, but I've got to now sort that in 3 days. That's going to be the toughest thing for me now, personally, because I won't have I genuinely do not have a clue. I know the music, but I don't know the song. I don't know the dance.
It's a physically tough, Kev. I mean, as a former athlete, is it noticeably different? Is it just like, are you wrecked after every session?
Not wrecked, but I mean, I've lost weight. I've lost a lot of weight without necessarily even trying, simply because you're constantly in a position of tensing your core up, holding your chest out. If you understand what I mean, it's almost like doing yoga for 2 hours on the ice and 3 hours on the ice when you're on the ice. So you're constantly holding yourself in a pose to try to engage your core and things like this when you're going. So physically, probably not, but definitely on your muscles, your groin, your glutes, your back, all the muscles that I probably haven't really worked in 6 or 7 years, and I've probably never worked some of the muscles that I'll be working now. So that's been the most difficult thing, just that little bit of pain around the midriff and things like that.
Just one more question I have to ask, Kev. I know OK Magazine have been prying over the last couple of weeks. Has she been to Achill yet?
No. Brown's not been to Achill yet. No. But
when is that big development going to happen?
Yeah. Well, that'll be probably in the next month or two, I'd say. Yeah, depends how long we go in the show for.
Right. I guess it's a positive. If you do get dumped out, there is the opportunity for an Irish holiday.
Yeah, thanks for that, Eoin. Yeah, really good.
I'm just reading what I'm seeing in the magazines, Kevin. To be fair, seeing in the montages before your performance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's it there. I feel as though I'm being used a little bit now, and yeah, that's kind of how it is, you know.
Chemistry is important, right?
So they say, Jay. So they say. I don't know. It seems that way. Yeah, it seems that's what they're saying. Yeah.
You look as comfortable now as you did last night on the ice, I have to say. Congratulations, though. And this is it, right? That was the whole thing. So long as you didn't go out first, that's all you needed. That's a win.
Yeah, honestly, genuinely, I thought it would be. Certainly when I started anyway, I thought that's me. I have to be going first week. So, yeah, we're through. And let's just see what next week brings now. So, yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with the way last night went. We've just got to roll with it now, haven't we?
Yeah, it's crack, is it? It seems like you are actually legitimately having crack.
Honestly, and I definitely, if anyone... Genuinely now, this is genuine. Anyone, I mean, you know, I've spoke to you lads over the years. I finished with my back, finished playing football with my back, and I've had back pain probably for 15 years, maybe even more, 17 years, I'd probably say, certainly since my mid-20s. And for the last month, 6 weeks, I'm getting out of bed with no back pain because I think it's genuinely down to the posture that I'm trying to hold when I'm doing it. So I'm pain-free. So literally getting out of bed's a bit of a buzz now in the morning, and I'm really enjoying it when I'm getting on the ice. So genuinely, it's been good fun, and I'm not just saying that for the sake of saying it. It's certainly nice I'm pain-free, but it's been good fun since I've started.
Good stuff. You find love as well, Kev. Win, 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 win.
Congratulations, Kev.
Yeah. Thanks,
Keep it
lads.
up.
Thank you.
We'll here. One last question. You were tweeting, download the app. Send a link for the app because we can't vote. Maybe we can vote through the app.
I don't think you can even download it in Ireland here. I don't know.
That's why I went looking for it.
I'm losing a lot of votes. I think that's how it is. I was lucky to get through last night, honestly. But yeah, you can't even vote in Ireland. It's a job, really.
Yeah, right. Try and get that fixed for next week, and we'll see what we can do.
I'm going to get on it. I'm going to be pushing that this week.
Kev, good stuff. Congratulations. Thanks a million, man. Cheers.
Thanks, Joe. Cheers, Eoin. Thanks a lot.
Good luck.
That's our man, a star, dancing on ice.
Yeah, very, very impressive. Last night I would have thought. Still,
because I was thinking the back is going to be a big issue. It's going to get worse and worse and all those falls. But actually, it's funny how working different parts of your body. It's funny how this might have, helped him back when he was playing.
It's an interesting theory, yeah. Like, I can't believe that. I thought that it would just put a serious strain on the body. You're kind of using muscles that you're not used to before. But actually, that's exactly the point. You are using different parts of your body. He has activated his back clearly in a way that he hasn't done before.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a case study for some physiotherapists, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Time for Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training I was driving home, I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
9:15 this morning here on OTBAM. It's time for Deal or No Deal. We start in the managerial merry-go-round. News from Barcelona, which could have big implications for the Premier League. Catalunya Radio report that Barca have made contact with Mauricio Pochettino about the 47-year-old replacing Ernesto Valverde as manager. Now, you might have been forgiven for thinking Valverde had actually already been sacked, but he hasn't. He is still the Barcelona manager. Xavi has apparently turned down the gig. Ronald Koeman has apparently turned down the gig. Ronald Koeman would be a very, very bad manager of Barcelona right now. Is Poch more likely to be the next Barcelona head coach or to succeed Ole at Old Trafford?
I would say more likely at Old Trafford because he used to manage Espanyol, doesn't want to manage Barcelona because he said he'd prefer to work on his farm in Argentina than go and work in certain places. So that would include Barcelona and Arsenal, for example.
Right.
So I'd be very surprised if that happened.
Does that change if Barcelona really come hard and say, look, we understand you've got a track record with our city rivals, but no one cares about our city rivals. They're Espanyol.
That's not a Barcelona thing to do. Barcelona are the most up themselves club in world football. They're totally worth being up themselves. They've got a lot to love about themselves, but they realise it more than any other club. So if one club is going to realise what it means to be a manager of a rival club, then it's Barcelona. And on top of that, they will have the sort of...
Is this not the type of thing that squashes your little cross-town city rival? Oh, look at this guy, he's one of your favourite guys. We've got him. Look, you can't even keep him. You can't even keep him hating us properly.
On the flip side, they'll have this nostalgic version of Ronald Koeman banging in an amazing free kick in 1992 or whatever it is. And that is the version of Ronald Koeman they see. They don't see the flailing Ronald Koeman battling with Everton fans on Instagram because he posted a red Christmas tree and then his Everton career ending in disaster. That is not the Ronald Koeman that they will see.
Ronald's doing all right now, though. The reason Ronald's not leaving is because he's got the Euros to win in 2020.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to win the Euros.
No.
Nathan does, but I don't think he is. Right, so if I'm Pochettino's agent, I'm putting this story out to try and get Man United to get their finger out.
Yeah, this could be good timing as well because, United go to Anfield on next Sunday, and remember the last time they went to Anfield, they ended up sacking Jose Mourinho. So could lightning strike twice? The only way they're going to get rid of Solskjaer is if they get an absolute hammering next Sunday.
Question for you, if you're a Man United fan, are you short-term paying a 5 or 6-0 for the long-term gain of getting Pochettino? Or are you like, no matter what happens, I cannot take getting hammered by this team at Anfield?
Well, cast your mind back to that game last December. So that's
back into it in the second half.
And
what was the score?
It was 3-1. It was 3-1 in the end to Liverpool. So Liverpool gifted United a goal. Lingard, a rare mistake from Alisson, and then Shaqiri came off the bench and scored a couple of goals. But I remember the lead up to that game. There's a lot of United supporters in our office, and I'm not going to name names, but some of them said, I would take
Tommy.
I would take a hiding. No, it wasn't Tommy actually. I would take a hiding off Liverpool if it meant the end of Jose Mourinho. So I wonder would the same apply this weekend. But see, the problem here is United fans see Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as a club legend, which he is for what he did on the pitch.
Yeah.
But slowly but surely,
Liverpool fans are like,
in
listen, let me tell you a story about Graham Souness, right? Let me just tell you a bit of a story about him. And even Kenny the second and third times.
Why do we keep bigging up this Manchester United job?
Because it's one of the biggest jobs in world football. You get paid loads of money, and you've got a massive transfer budget. And you've got well, it would be if you organised it properly. Look at the history of the club. It's like the Liverpool gig wasn't that great a gig until Brendan Rodgers made it a good gig, Rafa Benitez made it a good gig, and
look what happened.
Klopp made it a great gig.
But there was reorganisation above their head. There was better recruitment. Manchester United is not ripe for picking as a manager who wants to make the club better at the moment.
Well, if you come in and you have your recruitment team and your scouting team in place, and you know exactly how that's supposed to work, then you're just saying these are the teams, these are the players that we need, and we're going to get rid of. Like we have big assets that we can sell. You will get money for Jesse Lingard from some team newly promoted to the Premier League. You will get money for Martial if you want to sell him. You'll get money for Pogba. You'll get money for De Gea. You'll be able to recalibrate that squad pretty quickly with the right philosophy behind you.
Yeah. Plus, if I know a lot of people say, "Oh, look, Solskjaer is the victim of what's gone on at United before him," and some of that may be true. But you can't tell me that if Pochettino was given the United job tomorrow, he wouldn't do a better job than Solskjaer. At times you watch United, you just don't know what their plan is. Now, you know what they'll do at Anfield next Sunday, where they'll just try and play in the counter-attack. That's fine. Because
they're okay
players.
with that, yeah.
But I don't buy it. Like, I wouldn't read anything into the Norwich game because Norwich are hopeless. Norwich were everyone's favourites to go down, and that's exactly where they're going to go. Not because Daniel Farke's a bad manager, but they just don't have the quality, and they play a certain way which suited United. But Pochettino, if he was to come in, would have to be stronger than Solskjaer. But nobody wants to speak out against the Glazers or against Ed Woodward because then you lose your job.
Yeah, well, that's
Solskjaer, it must be killing him. He's, he loves the club and he's just looking on, and he's probably thinking, I need players. Ed, any chance you could do this for me? And Woodward is too busy trying to sort out that noodle sponsorship.
Well, he's got a team to sort out the noodle sponsorship, and they're doing a great job. That commercial team at Manchester United are best in class. Which
how come Ed Woodward is never linked to other clubs? How come other football clubs don't come in looking to get the services of Ed Woodward?
Right, 21 minutes past 9. Remaining in Spain, El Desmarque report that Liverpool are preparing to make a 90 million transfer move for Barcelona forward Ousmane Dembele. How legitimate do we believe that possibility is, and where would he fit into club's philosophy and the club's wage structure?
Well, if they were going to sign him, he obviously becomes their highest paid player. So how does that go down?
Does he?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was...
How much is Salah on?
But I think what the figure out there is 200,000 a week.
Right, so 100 netto.
And you're looking at, I think Dembele at the moment is, when he signed, because he was only 19 or 20 when he signed for Barca, wasn't it 250 grand he was getting?
Right.
So you'd have a guy coming in that, unbelievable talent, has had a stuttering career at Barcelona so far because of injuries. So you wonder, I don't think it would be an issue if he hit the ground running, but you're looking at someone like Virgil van Dijk, the document that was kind of doing the rounds there a few weeks ago with all their wages, he's on 150 grand a week.
Right.
Now that was
He needs a
something
pay
he
rise.
got. He needs a pay rise. He'll get his pay rise because, and I'm sure he's probably been told, look, let's try and get over the line this season, win the Premier League, then we'll sit down and we'll start negotiating new deals. And I'm sure there's a few players in that situation. I wonder, like you're looking at the front three of the players that, like I still think Mane is the best of the front three, but he's the one that seems to always get linked with that move to Real Madrid. Firmino doesn't. Salah has obviously been linked with moves away. So if they were going to replace Salah or Mane, which I can't imagine Salah or Mane, I can't imagine Mane leaving. Salah, I think, would be more likely to leave than Mane.
I think that happens quickly when an agent rings and says, I've got $500,000 a month, $500,000 a week for you, as opposed to whatever you're on.
Yeah,
and look, the offer is so spectacular that he goes and says, look, we've won a Champions League, we've won a league, I want to go and make my money.
And, do you know what, we don't know until Liverpool win a Premier League that could change, that could move the goalpost for a few of those players, saying they came here to work under Jurgen Klopp to win trophies, and if they win a Premier League off the back of winning a Champions League, then maybe. But I don't think it would panic Liverpool fans because they've been so good on the transfer market. They think, okay, you lose. Like Coutinho is the prime example. Everyone thought, Liverpool are making these great strides under Klopp, and they're after selling who at the time was perceived their best player. And
yeah, he had been so in and out of the team though, hadn't he?
He was suffering from back problems, but I don't think they were as severe as Kevin Kilbane's back injuries.
They definitely weren't, and they'd been fine without him. So you've seen what that team was like without him. Yeah. I think that if two of those front three were to go over the next 18 months, there would be a drop off. But anyway, okay, so we don't think that's possible at the moment. A final note from Barcelona: Suarez has undergone keyhole surgery on his knee and is out for 4 months, so this might have some transfer implications. We'll keep an eye on that one. La Gazzetta dello Sport report that Spurs playmaker Christian Eriksen has agreed a deal with Inter until 2024, worth $6.5 million per year. Tottenham expect to net $17 million if that deal goes through. Have Spurs made a mistake here? They sit 9 points off fourth.
I think the general feeling was at the end of last season that he was gone, and you know he threw his shirt into the crowd, which a few players did after the game on Saturday against Liverpool. It wasn't just Eriksen, but he almost played like it was a lap of honour because he didn't do much. And I was surprised to see him in the starting 11. When you saw Eriksen and Winks in central midfield for Spurs, you thought, I don't really know what Mourinho's hoping to achieve with those lads in there because they're just so lightweight. They're decent footballers, but Liverpool's midfield is built for purpose and
muscular,
to run over teams. And I just think Eriksen, obviously, it was interesting a few comments he made after they beat Ajax in the Champions League last season. He effectively said we shouldn't have beaten them, we were lucky. And it was almost just that feeling that he realised that the best of this team is been and gone. When they were finishing runners-up to Chelsea, when they were coming third in that two-horse race to Leicester, they somehow still managed to finish behind Arsenal that season. But they were the best years for the likes of Eriksen and for Spurs and Pochettino.
So take the money now, get rid of him, off you go.
Yeah,
because he's phoning it in.
Yeah, absolutely, and just get him out of the club. And you know, Inter Milan isn't a bad move for them. They're second in the league. They drew at the weekend, so they're 2 points behind Juventus. But
$6.5 million per year figure seems to be a net figure from one of the
I never really bought into how he was getting linked with Barca or Real Madrid. Never thought he was that good.
No, he's not a Real Madrid player. No. He's a Real Madrid sub, and if you're going to get him for free, you might take him. But the Metro believes that Jack Grealish could be on his way to Manchester City. He's a 24-year-old English young gun, more likely to move to the blue or red side of Manchester.
I wonder, is this the old classic? Let him get linked to City, panic United into paying more money. And I think he'd be more suited to playing for United in terms of if they're looking for that kind of player. City obviously want players in midfield that are able to pass it zippy. Now, we don't see Grealish can do that, but
he probably can, yeah.
He just doesn't do it with Villa because he gets the ball
and
he has to. Well, he's not going to be passing it to Danny Drinkwater because he won't get it back. Yeah, he
What a great move that was.
Plenty. Well, we talked about him last week on Deal or No Deal. Was he the man
No.
to keep Phil up?
Turns out.
And after about half an hour yesterday, the answer was a big fat no. But I think with Grealish, it's just a case of finish out the season. There'll be offers on the table for him, and
go where you're going to play every week. That's what he needs to do at this stage of his career. Go and play every week and become a great player over the next 3 years. And if if it's not Man City or Man United, it could be Spurs. You could play 3 years for Spurs.
I think if Villa stay up, I think he'll stay with Villa.
I do too, but I don't think they're going to stay up at this stage. They're only a point off. But
Pepe Reina, apparently.
I'm not sure we get to that. So we had an update on that last week, but it looks like it's going to happen, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think he would have made a huge difference yesterday, but also with Villa, losing to City, they were always losing to City. It's a case of hopefully they didn't suffer too much of a confidence loss.
Psychological issue, yeah. All right, Chelsea want Brighton centre-back Lewis Dunk, but are being asked to shell out 50 million quid for the defender. That's according to the Times. Can you see this deal happening, and would it be good or bad for Shane Duffy's career? Duncan Duffy was, a thing for a while last season. It's disappeared this year, really.
Yeah, well, Graham Potter has had Shane Duffy out of the team. Obviously, at times as well, they've played three at the back. So the Duncan Duffy, the donut franchise that surely has to be built in Brighton. Maybe they want
Chelsea now. Maybe
they put that one on hold. But if you're getting 50 million for Lewis Dunk, if you're Brighton, you take that. Decent player, but not 50 million. Great for Shane Duffy though.
It is now, because he'd get back in the team.
They're getting sucked into the relegation battle as well.
Yeah, so they're 3 points clear of relegation at the moment. They're in 14th, but they're only 3 points clear. One transfer rumour that just won't go away is Sporting Lisbon star Bruno Fernandes to Manchester United. The latest is the English club are willing to put 65 million cash on the table after a cash plus trade package. 65 million including cash plus trade involving one of Rojo, Pereira or Angel Gomez.
Who would you take? Probably...
No, I read that completely wrong. 65 million cash straight up. The good people at Sporting Lisbon were like, screw your Marcus Rojo, screw your Joel Pereira, screw your Angel Gomez. They're not interested in that, so it's 65 cash straight.
Yeah, and he would definitely make a huge difference to United.
Straight away?
Yeah, no, he's ready, he's good to go. He scored a couple of goals for Sporting at the weekend. I've seen him playing in the Europa League this season. There's definitely a feeling that he's all this ability, but he's just biding his time. And I just wouldn't have much confidence, though, in United getting that deal done.
He's 25.
They struggle to get deals done in August. They got 3 done in the end, but when the pressure's on in January, I just don't have much faith in them getting it done.
Do you remember the Fellaini deal? That's like the everybody should just keep going back to that. Fellaini available for a lower price at the start of the summer. They wait and then pay more at the end of the summer to get him, when it would have been better for everybody to get him in at the lower price and have him do the pre-season training and adapt to the demands of the club. That was the hallmark of a club being badly mismanaged.
Harry Maguire, they spent all summer trying to negotiate and they paid exactly what the asking price was at the start of the summer.
Right, according to the Sunday Mirror, Manchester United could have signed Ajax's Donny van de Beek last summer for 20 million but didn't. It's believed the English club backed down when it became clear that Pogba would stay in Manchester. He's now expected to join Real Madrid for 46.8 million. The 22-year-old has commented on the rumours. I have said it before and I'll say it again. I will remain at Ajax this season and maybe next season as well. These reports about Real Madrid and Manchester United are a good sign, but it's not important now. I've said I will stay at Ajax and I will do so 100%. Of the Ajax class of 2019, who's going to have the best career is my question here.
Is it just a case of being between De Ligt and De Jong?
You would have thought so. De Jong is going to have the better career.
Well, if, for example, Xavi gets the Barcelona job and he takes Frankie De Jong under his wing and said, this is how you play the role, then he could be unbelievable.
Why are you writing De Ligt off so quickly?
It's nothing to do with writing De Ligt off. It's to do with doing the opposite to De Jong and playing in that midfield, playing in that club with the players around you. Midfielders tend to excel, I would have thought. Now,
those of them fall by the wayside, though.
Plus, midfielders are sexier.
Well, but it's just that he's gone to learn Catenaccio, having emerged as one of the best young ball-playing centre-backs that we've seen. And he's going to grow alongside Van Dijk at the international level, no?
Well, that is a good point. And, I mean...
It's like the perfect career arc for a 21-year-old defender.
It's true, and I think that probably De Ligt did take over from De Jong as the poster boy of that Ajax team as the season went on last year. I just think that...
Is Van de Beek any good?
Yeah, he was good. He was obviously one of the ones that caught the eye, as a lot of them did in the Champions League last season. I seem to remember the game against Juventus as well. and obviously he would have played against Real Madrid, so they'd have a fair idea what kind of player they're getting. But yeah, if you're going for Real Madrid or Manchester United at this,
you got for Real Madrid.
Yeah, you got for Real Madrid.
One last update: Crystal Palace and Italian side Lazio have joined the race to sign 34-year-old Manchester United fullback Ashley Young. He has also been offered an 18-month contract by Inter Milan. Would he be a good option for Palace to have at this point in the squad?
Perhaps it's...
Yeah, they're light in numbers. Like, they brought Tosin in and he ends up coming on against Arsenal. So they don't have the biggest squad, but if you're Ashley Young, if you're leaving Manchester United, go to Inter Milan. Unless he wants to go back to London.
Well, they are playing Kelly at right back at the moment, Crystal Palace. Ashley Young might get... a right back, should say. Ashley Young probably gets into that. Do you know who might actually become like a bit of a dark horse for the summer when you talk about Palace fullbacks? Is Rita Valls, the left back, who was unbelievable on Saturday and has been playing really well this year. That could become the story of the summer about Manchester United looking for a Crystal Palace fullback.
There you go. It's a bit of scouting from Eoin Sheahan at the end of Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
All right, at 9:33 a.m, that's it for OTBAM this morning. If you missed any of it, you can get the full thing back on podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. The Go Loud app, we're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, we're on wherever it is you do get your podcast. The whole thing is time-stamped as well, so you can scroll forward to the bits that you want. If you missed anything this morning, we've had Alan Quinlan, we had Kevin Kilbane on his Dancing on Ice performance, we had Deal or No Deal, we had NFL reaction to a wild weekend with Mike Carlson, and we had James Pearce talking about Liverpool and how they might now actually, maybe go the entire season unbeaten. You'll also get us on YouTube, where you can podcast us to your smart TV. We're back tomorrow morning from 7:30 a.m. We'll see you then. Paul Galvin's going to join us in the studio. Best of luck.
OTB AM. This is OTB.